Chapter 720. Second brother, it's under your feet. Just when everyone was wondering where the boss had gone, Wang Yu suddenly shouted, "Boss, get out of the way." When Yin Lao Air heard Wang Yu's warning, he swung his shield to the side and smashed it on Greater Peak. Greater Peak's small body couldn't withstand Yin Lao Air's attack, and he was sent flying. The moment Greater Peak was pushed away, a Cloverleaf Reaper appeared under Greater Peak's feet. Then, the Cloverleaf Reaper raised its dagger and jumped up from the ground. F***CKU, why did you hit me? Greater Peak was sent flying for no reason. Just when he was about to curse at Yin Lao Air, he saw the Cloverleaf Reaper jump out from the ground. Greater Peak couldn't help but feel a chill in his crotch. Damn, this boss is so vicious. If it wasn't for Yin Lao Air pushing him away, Greater Peak would have been stabbed in the crotch. As a man, the crotch area had two weak points, the asterisk and the asterisk. No matter which one it wasn't pleasant. After all, although it didn't hurt, it left a shadow. The Three-Leaf Reaper's attack missed, so it grabbed its dagger in a reverse grip. It jumped up and turned sideways to press towards the nearby, reach the peak. Grandson, Yin Lao Air blocked with his shield and taunted the Cloverleaf Reaper. Taunt's effect was forced. The Cloverleaf Reaper that was taunted turned around and stabbed its dagger into Yin Lao Air's shield. Clang! With the sound of metal colliding, Yin Lao Air's block value was emptied and the shield's durability was reduced by half. Yin Lao Air wanted to cry. How did his shield become a consumable item? It couldn't be helped. Shields were the hardest weapons to drop. The shields on the market were either trash or too expensive. Yin Lao Air had a godly shield, so he naturally wouldn't spend money to buy a better one. A trash shield could block monsters, but blocking a boss was a consumable. Yin's second brother's reaction was quite fast. The moment his right shield was pierced by the Three-Leaf Reaper, he quickly switched to his left hand and grabbed the Three-Leaf Reaper. Force Grab was a level 40 secondary grab skill of the shield bearer. It had a very high priority, and the Clover Assassin was immediately pulled in front of Yin Lao Air. Seeing this, Wuji shouted, "Got him! Attack him quickly!" Not far away, Bao San and Ming Jiandaoxue didn't wait for Wuji's order. They had already rushed forward and pointed their weapons at the Three-Leaf Reaper's back. However, at that moment, the Clover Reaper that Yin Lao Air had pulled down took out a green ball-shaped object and pressed it on Yin Lao Air's face. Bang! A cloud of green pollen exploded with a muffled sound, and Yin Lao Air's face turned green. Bao San and the others who rushed over to help were also drowned in the pollen. When the pollen dispersed, the Three-Leaf Reaper had already disappeared, and Yin Lao Air and the other two were poisoned, their HP dropping rapidly. Spring Sword tapped the ground with his staff and cast a spell, dispelling the poison on Yin Lao Air and the other two. Wuji cast an AoE healing spell to bring the three's HP back to a safe level. Although everyone's cooperation was still orderly, the look of surprise on their faces was very obvious, because at this time, they had already realized how the boss disappeared. Did the boss use earth travel just now? Greater Heights said in horror. Wuji nodded and said, "It seems like it. I didn't expect a gold-tier boss to have such a troublesome skill." In Rebirth, the most terrifying skills were naturally the legendary skills of each element. They could destroy the heavens and the earth, and their damage was shocking. However, if one were to say that earth travel was the second most troublesome skill, no one would say that it was the first. Everyone knew that assassins were the most annoying because they knew stealth. However, at the current stage of the game, players still had anti-stealth methods. From the low-cost lime powder to the high-cost Eye of Truth, they were all tools that could render assassins' stealth useless. After an assassin used stealth, although his body would become invisible, he would still be there. If he was attacked, he would be forced back to his original form and might even die. However, both skills that came and went without a trace, earth travel was much more powerful because earth travel was used to travel underground. In the game, the ground under the player's feet was definitely an excellent cover. Not to mention normal attacks. Even the ultimate skills of various professions would be a waste of MP if they hit the ground. Because of this, earth travel was a protection skill that allowed the target to be absolutely safe. Think about it, being able to appear and stab people from time to time in an absolutely safe situation. How terrifying would that be? Greater Heights was the same as Wuji's Spring Soar. They had both participated in the closed beta. The players who participated in the closed beta had a much deeper impression of earth travel than the average person. In fact, the proud record of fighting against 1,000 people alone was not exclusive to Wang Yu. Back in the early stages of the closed beta, when everyone was around level 20, there was an assassin player called Earth in the European server who single-handedly beat up thousands of players from an opposing guild to the point that they did not dare to go out. He was known as a legend in the European server, and that Earth was an assassin who could use earth travel. At that time, the video of Earth single-handedly defeating the opposing guild was circulated on the homepage of various major forums in the European server, the American server, the Asian server, and the local server. Even a person like Greater Heights, who focused on strategy and did not like gossip, had a taste of the power of earth travel. Because of this, earth travel steadily surpassed Imp Summon and was rated as the first of the top 10 overpowered skills in the closed beta. At this time, a boss that could use such a shameless skill suddenly appeared in front of everyone. How could they not panic? One must know that no matter how powerful Earth was, he was just a player. His attack power was much weaker than a boss. Greater Heights said in a panic, "Second brother, put your shield on the ground. I want to step on it. You must ensure my safety, or else we will not be able to complete the mission." When Yin Lao heard this, he was about to throw the shield on the ground. Wuji shook his head and said, "The opponent's whereabouts are unpredictable, and he even trapped the person who needs to be protected the most. This is not appropriate. Old cow, you go and protect Greater Heights. We will deal with this Reaper." A level 40 shield was as big as a door. Stepping on the shield was indeed a good way to defend against earth travel. Greater Heights' brain worked very fast, and he casually came up with such an idea. However, this also had a drawback. It greatly limited the range of activity of the Greater Peaks. If the Clover Reaper was determined to reach the Greater Peaks, the location of the Greater Peaks would be too obvious. Okay, Wang Yu quickly walked to Greater Heights' side. Seeing Wang Yu walking over, Greater Heights asked Wuji unhappily, "Why don't you let the tank protect me? What's the use of a Grandmaster of Combat?" Since it was for protection, the tank profession was naturally more suitable for this. In Greater Heights' mind, the Grandmaster of Combat profession was only slightly better than the squishy profession because of their physique. Chapter 721. Greater Heights was scolded by Wuji for no reason. He was baffled and was about to retort when he suddenly heard Wang Yu yell, "It's here." Immediately after, Greater Heights felt his body suddenly become light. In the next moment, he was lifted by Wang Yu and flew to the side. Almost at the same time, Chuanjin and the others quickly surrounded the place where Wang Yu and Greater Heights were standing. What's going on? Greater Heights was in chaos. Pooh! Just as Greater Heights was feeling puzzled, a muffled sound came from the ground. The Clover Reaper flew from the place where he was standing with its dagger raised. You know where the boss is?" Greater Heights turned his head and looked at Wang Yu in surprise. At this time, Greater Heights already understood what was going on. No wonder a Grandmaster of Combat was sent to protect him. This guy had a skill that could detect earth movement. "Yes, I know," Wang Yu said. "What skill is this?" Greater Heights was a strategy expert. Seeing a strange skill that he had never heard of, he asked, as if it was an occupational disease. Wang Yu confidently explained, "It's not a skill, it's perception." Perception? Does a Grandmaster of Combat have such a passive skill? Could it be like observation hockey? Greater Heights asked impatiently. Wang Yu was dumbfounded by the series of questions that had reached the pinnacle of perfection. She simply kept silent. As the two spoke, Chuanjin's people had already started fighting with the Clover Reaper. "Don't let it touch the ground," Wuji said as he threw a holy state on Bao San. Bao San leaped and jumped over with a collapsing mountain strike. The Clover Reaper that was falling was hit by Bao San and flew up. Attack! Following Wuji's order, Mingdu's lightning, Chun Xiang's poison, the assassin's backstab, and the archer's accurate shot landed on the Clover Reaper's body, dealing a wave of perfect damage. No matter what, the Clover Reaper was still a boss. Its health bar was disgustingly long. No matter how strong a team was, it was impossible to kill it in less than 2 seconds with Collapsing Mountain. Seeing that the Three-Leaf Reaper was about to hit the ground, Pride leaped up and kicked the Three-Leaf Reaper's head with Flash Chain Kick. The Three-Leaf Reaper shrieked in pain as it was kicked toward Ian Lauer, who was ready with his shield raised. Seeing the Clover Reaper flying over, Ian Lauer used all his strength to block with his shield and sent the Clover Reaper flying again. Amazing! Reaching apex could not help but exclaim when he saw Quan Zhen's team send the Clover Reaper flying for the second time. Bao San was able to send the Shamrock Reaper flying the moment it landed. Although this was a high level of skill, it was far from being as amazing as Triple Slash. However, the cooperation between Pride and Old Yin's second brother to send the Shamrock Reaper flying was truly shocking. It had to be known that the boss had not been sent flying for a long time. To place one's Pride and Ian Lauer were able to find the boss's landing location within 2 seconds and accurately kick the boss over. This level of teamwork was definitely not something an ordinary expert could possess. They were even comparable to professional players. Seeing the boss being sent flying for the second time, reaching apex understood Quan Zhen's intentions. The cooldowns of Collapsing Mountain and Shield Raise were not long. The monk was a class with the grab skill. Just Knee Strike and Ferocious Tiger Strike alone had a grab duration of 4 seconds. Even though the Clover Reaper was a boss, because it was a humanoid boss, the grab duration was still 2 seconds. With Collapsing Mountain and Shield Raise, coupled with the monk's grab support, as long as they did not make any mistakes, the boss would not land on the ground before it died. To think that they could come up with such a tactic of sending people flying infinitely, and they could even execute it together. Whether it was in terms of technique or mentality, these fellows from the Quan Zhen sect were far stronger than anyone could imagine. If it were not for the fact that Rebirth did not have all the counts, reaching Apex would have thought that Quan Zhen's team was from a professional team. In the time that reaching Apex was stunned, Quan Zhen's second wave of damage had been dealt. With this wave of damage, the Clover Reaper's HP had dropped by a full 5%. If the Clover Reaper was a normal boss, with Quan Zhen's coordinated attacks, it would only be a matter of time before it died. However, the Clover Reaper was an elite boss, so its attacks were much more flexible. To place one's Pride stretched out his hands and was about to pull the Clover Reaper into his embrace. However, the Clover Reaper suddenly leaped into the air and flew above to place one's Pride's head, causing to place one's Pride to miss. It's a double jump. Brother Spring, help us. Wuji saw that a place one's Pride skill had missed and immediately gave Spring Soar an order. Spring Soar waved his staff, and 6 demons appeared in 2 rows under the Clover Reaper's feet. Spring Soar's demons were quite large, and when they were close together, they immediately covered the ground under the Clover Reaper's feet. With nowhere to land, the Shamrock Reaper stomped on one of the demons' heads and leaped to the side. Halfway through the Shamrock Reaper's descent, withered vines appeared around the demon, covering the ground once more. At the same time, Radiant and the other range classes prepared their second wave of attacks, hurling them at the Shamrock Reaper. In a panic, the Three-Leaf Reaper stomped its feet in the air and launched a double jump again, enduring the long-range firepower of the Quan Zhen sect. With a wave of its left hand, a vine flew out and swept towards Wuji. Wuji's staff flashed with a white light, and he cast a holy shield on himself. A cleric's holy shield could only protect the player from damage, so the Clover Reaper's vines still wrapped around Wuji's neck. After the vines wrapped around Wuji's neck, the Clover Reaper's figure flashed and instantly appeared behind Wuji. Then it stabbed the back of Wuji's neck. Wuji had his invincible shield activated. Although the stab did not deal any damage, it still caused cold sweat to drip down Wuji's back. He did not expect the boss to have a teleportation skill. Fortunately, the stab was aimed at him. If the stab had landed on someone else, they might have died. After the stab ended, The Clover Reaper did not deal any damage, but it did not continue fighting. It lowered its body and instantly sank into the ground. F*CK. I let him get away again. After seeing the Clover Reaper disappear, Greater Heights smashed his left fist into his right palm. He anxiously said to Wang Yu, "Substitute, can't you sense where the boss is? Hurry up and help." Substitute? Sense? Wang Yu was slightly stunned. Since when did he become a substitute? Didn't they make you a substitute because you have sense? It's time for you to perform, Greater Heights said. After entering the dungeon, the others had been dealing damage. Wang Yu's damage was not high, so Greater Heights had treated Wang Yu as a substitute for this group of experts. Chapter 722. You can't sense it? Why? Greater Heights asked in confusion. The boss has to attack me, or someone very close to me. Wang Yu replied. Wang Yu's sense could only sense people who had killing intent towards him. In layman's terms, this was a passive skill, and he could not initiate an attack. The three-leaf Reaper appeared and disappeared mysteriously underground. No one knew who it was going to attack, but Wang Yu naturally could not sense it. Oh, so it's a passive skill. What's the range of your skill? Greater Heights asked again. It was a taboo to casually ask about other people's special skills, but Greater Heights had an inexplicable interest in collecting this kind of information. I don't know, Wang Yu said impatiently. I know it's a taboo. I can give you money. Greater Heights continued to pester him. This isn't a skill. Wang Yu glared at Greater Heights and did not want to talk to him anymore. Seeing that Wang Yu was finally unhappy, Greater Heights tactfully shut his mouth. There was not a hint of surprise on his face. It seemed like this wasn't the first time he had been treated like this. The three-leaf Reaper seemed to be afraid of the Chuanjin people. This time, after it dug into the ground, it did not come out for more than a minute. Seeing that the three-leaf Reaper did not come out, the Chuanjin people's expressions darkened. This kind of hidden assassin-type boss was always focused on killing it in one hit. If the three-leaf Reaper jumped up and down and continuously attacked, they would still be able to follow its tracks and know how to defend against it. However, this boss was hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to attack. The longer it took, the more uncertain they felt. Why don't we open the door first? Wuji said. Everyone's goal was to pass through the vine door and enter the next scene. At this time, the three-leaf Reaper did not come out no matter what, so there was no need to waste time with it. Okay, famous sword Daoxue nodded and quickly ran to the door. He used his unlock skill on the wooden lock on the vine door, but the system prompted, sealed, target unavailable. No, there's a seal. Daoxue said, we should kill the boss first. Oh, everyone responded. It seemed like this boss was a boss that had to be killed. It wasn't uncommon in this kind of instance dungeon. Damn it, if the boss doesn't come out, how are we supposed to kill it? To place one's pride, he was the first to lose his cool. He was just a kid, so his mentality was definitely not as stable as the other old foxes. Don't worry, I don't believe that the Earth Movement spell has no time limit. Just as everyone was trying to persuade Wang Yu to place one's pride, Wang Yu suddenly said, he's here again. When the others heard Wang Yu's words, their hearts trembled and they hurriedly turned around. But just as Wang Yu finished speaking, a vine shot out from the ground, shooting straight towards the peak of perfection. The elite boss was indeed smart. It knew that if it dug its way out, it would be caught. This time, it simply threw vines out of the ground. The three-leaf Reaper's vines were extremely fast. Seeing the vines flying towards him, Greater Peak was scared silly. Before he could dodge, the vines were already in front of him. Just as Greater Peak thought that he was going to die, a large hand suddenly reached out and blocked in front of Greater Peak's head. With a forceful grip, the vine was caught in the hand. Greater Peak turned around and saw that the owner of the large hand was Wang Yu, who was protecting him. After Wang Yu grabbed the vine, he took a step to the side and rammed his shoulder into Greater Heights, knocking Greater Heights to the side. He then grabbed the vine with his other hand and pulled back with both hands. The three-leaf Reaper was pulled out of the ground by Wang Yu. After the three-leaf Reaper was pulled out of the ground by Wang Yu, its figure flashed and it instantly appeared behind Wang Yu. It raised its dagger and stabbed forward. Wang Yu twisted his left hand and wrapped the vine around his arm. His right hand grabbed, the three-leaf reaper's neck. Ferocious Tiger, strike activated. Before the three-leaf reaper could stab the three-leaf reaper's dagger into the back of Wang Yu's neck, the powerful grab dragged the three-leaf reaper to the front of Wang Yu. After grabbing the three-leaf reaper, Wang Yu turned his left hand and grabbed the lower half of the three-leaf reaper's body. He slammed it down and at the same time raised his knee. Gotcha! Wang Yu's knee slammed into the three-leaf reaper's lower back. Dash 1-1, 1-1-1. A huge critical hit appeared above the three-leaf reaper. At this time, Wang Yu's grab time was over. Although the three-leaf reaper was badly beaten, without the crowd control effect, Wang Yu couldn't grab it. The three-leaf reaper's body flipped to the right on Wang Yu's knee and was about to land. Wang Yu stretched out his hand to stop it, but the three-leaf reaper threw a pollen bomb. Wang Yu's outstretched hand clenched, and a chi wave shield blocked the pollen bomb. Bang! The pollen bomb exploded into a cloud of green mist, and the clover reaper took the opportunity to burrow into the ground. Wang Yu calmly grabbed the vine and pulled it out. As a result, the three-leaf reaper had cut off the vine and ran away. It can run? Wang Yu muttered to himself. He rushed to greater heights and said, "Come to me." But at the side, Deng Fengji was already dumbfounded. Pointing at Wang Yu and the others who were running over, he said, This substitute. When Greater Heights first met Wang Yu was scaring people on the street. The experts in the game were very concerned about their reputation. Wang Yu's actions didn't seem like that of an expert, so Greater Heights instinctively thought that Wang Yu was just a hooligan. The reason he could hang out with the people from Chuanjin was because of his perceptive sense. Who knew that Wang Yu's attack would be so fierce, fast, accurate, and ruthless? The elite boss was actually thrown to the ground like a dead dog. It had to be known that the three-leaf reaper hadn't been in such a sorry state when it was surrounded by the people from Chuanjin. Wang Yu was just one person, but he was able to completely suppress the boss. What was even more frightening was that Wang Yu was empty-handed. What did it mean to deal more than Wang Yu with his bare hands? At this stage, even if it was a thunder mage that added all his points into intelligence, he could only deal around 4,000 damage with his bare hands. Substitute? Who told you that he's a substitute? Faced with Greater Heights' question, the people from Chuanjin were also very confused. Greater Heights said, "Weren't you guys the ones dealing damage along the way?" Hearing Greater Heights' words, the people from Chuanjin blushed. Wuji waved his hand and said, "All right, stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and think of a way to deal with the boss." Seeing the reaction of the people from Chuanjin, Greater Heights was even more puzzled. Little did they know that Wang Yu's damage was too high. Every time they ran the instance dungeon, he could instantly kill the small monsters. He could take on the boss by himself, which made it a big problem for the other people in Chuanjin to deal damage. Therefore, a long time ago, everyone had set a rule for Wang Yu. Don't leave the boss, at least let others kill the small monsters. Chapter 723. I don't know if you guys noticed. Wuji asked everyone. When the boss came out just now, its health bar was full. Hearing this, everyone's expression immediately turned ugly. That's right, when the three-leaf reaper flew out just now, its health bar was full. In other words, the three-leaf reaper's earth movement could not only hide but also heal. This was very awkward. Didn't this mean that as long as the boss could not be killed in one go, the boss would be invincible? This boss is too annoying. It's like a mouse. Should we think of a way to get out first? Wang Yu said regretfully. Just now, Wang Yu grabbed the vines and thought that he had caught the boss. Who knew that the boss was so cunning and knew how to cut the ropes? This really made Wang Yu depressed. Greater Heights shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter how we get the boss out. What's important is how we stop it from crawling into the ground." No matter how strong the earth movement skill was, it had a time limit. The three-leaf reaper could not stay in the ground forever. Currently, the boss could only stay in the ground for 90 seconds at most. So, the most important thing was to prevent the boss from going into the ground. After all, the boss could heal when it crawled into the ground. You're right. Wuji nodded in agreement and said, "Has anyone read Investiture of the Gods?" No. Everyone shook their heads. That was a book from many years ago. They had never heard of it. Even Wuji had occasionally seen it when he was collecting war books from the Cold Weapon era, let alone the others. Wuji said, "In that book, there was a guy who was good at the earth element. He was very annoying, but there was a more powerful guy who used a spell to catch him." "What spell?" everyone asked curiously. "Turn the earth into steel," Wuji said. "TSK, isn't that obvious? It sounds like a Xinxia skill. Do Western fantasy games even have such magic?" Everyone said in disappointment. On the other hand, Reach the Peak rubbed his chin and said, "You can't say that. It's impossible to turn the ground into steel in Western fantasy games, but it's possible for ice mages to turn the ground into ice. The medium of earth movement is earth, so it's impossible to cast it on ice." Hearing those words, Wuji smiled and said, "You're right, but we don't have any ice element mages. Greater Heights was stunned for a moment. He suddenly remembered that Mingdu's magic was either fire or lightning. It was obvious that he was not an ice magician. However, Greater Heights took out a scroll and said, "No problem. I have a magic scroll here." "Magic scroll? Let me take a look." Wuji reached out to Greater Heights, and Greater Heights threw the scroll to Wuji. "Magic scroll, 1,000 miles of ice rare item. Able to cast ice magic 1,000 miles of ice, once without any cost. Required profession mage." Damn, 1,000 miles of ice. Looking at the magic scroll, Wuji sucked in a breath of cold air and glanced at Greater Heights. 1,000 miles of ice was the ultimate move of an ice magician. It would be an exaggeration to say that it could destroy the world, but it could still shake the world. More importantly, this thing couldn't be bought even if one had the money. This guy actually wanted to use this thing to decorate the ground. Really, initially, Wuji only wanted to extort some money from Greater Heights. Who knew that this guy would be so generous? "How is it? Is it okay?" Greater Heights saw that Wuji did not speak, so he stretched out his head and asked. "Yes," Wuji said as he stuffed the scroll into his bag. Seeing that Wuji had stolen the scroll, Greater Heights said angrily, "Damn, that's for mages." Wuji said, "I know. Our mages don't need this. It's too wasteful." "Wasteful my ass, didn't I say?" Before Greater Heights could finish his words, Wuji forcefully interrupted. "All right, it's fine as long as we can keep the boss here. Stop babbling." "Damn, you shameless be asterisk starred. Here it comes again." While they were talking, the three-leaf reaper's earth element time was up. It broke out of the ground again, the vines in its hands still flying at Greater Heights. Greater Heights was really unlucky. The aggro of the boss in manual mode was so unpredictable, but it was always on him. This was really bad luck. Of course, the Shamrock Reaper's luck wasn't any better. It had encountered the Reach the Peak that was protected by Wang Yu, and it had missed 3 times in a row. This time, its target hadn't changed. It was really persistent. Seeing the vines flying towards him, Wang Yu stretched out his hand and wrapped the vines around his arm. He casually pulled, and the three-leaf reaper was pulled out by Wang Yu. The three-leaf reaper seemed to be afraid of Wang Yu. Seeing that the enemy was Wang Yu again, it waved the dagger in its other hand, cutting the vines, and was about to enter the ground. At that time, Mingdu pointed his staff and activated Ice Mirror. A layer of ice appeared under the three-leaf reaper's feet, and the three-leaf reaper was left on the ground. "Damn, didn't you say that there were no ice mages?" Greater Heights pointed at Wuji with a red face. "Meow, there were clearly ice mages, but you said there weren't. You cheated me of a precious scroll for nothing." "Hee hee." Wuji laughed and said, "Who said that an ice mage is an ice mage?" At the same time, Mingdu casually smashed the boss's head with a storm spell. Greater Heights immediately shut his mouth when he saw this. Storm spell was a necessary skill for lightning mages. This was definitely not fake. The reason why Mingdu knew Ice Mirror was most likely because he had a fortuitous encounter. As for fortuitous encounters, Greater Heights often did quests and came into contact with many strange items. Hence, it was easier for him to accept it than the average person. Now that he saw Wuji being so shameless, he could only admit that he was unlucky. After the three-leaf reaper was blocked, Bao 3 leaped over with Mountain Crushing Strike and sent the three-leaf reaper flying. The other members of the Quan Jun sect also attacked the Three-Leaf Reaper. Their teamwork was the same as before, sending the Three-Leaf Reaper flying. However, this time, they had Mingdu's Ice Mirror and Wuji's Invincible Holy Light Shield. Even if the Three-Leaf Reaper used its vines to teleport, it would not be able to burrow into the ground. At that moment, the Three-Leaf Reaper was like a stray dog trapped in an alley. No matter how it struggled, it was firmly stuck on the ground. Xuanzhen's damage output was quite high. Wave after wave of attacks landed on the Three-Leaf Reaper. Very soon, the Three-Leaf Reaper's HP dropped to about 30%. Usually, the boss would transform at this stage, so everyone was very cautious. However, the Three-Leaf Reaper did not seem to have this ability. It did not transform until its HP was below 30%. 29%, 28%, 25%, the boss's HP bar was getting lower and lower. Just as everyone successfully interrupted the Three-Leaf Reaper's vine attack, a red light flashed on the Three-Leaf Reaper's body, and it jumped up again. It waved the vine in its hand and flew towards Mingdu. Not good. Chapter 724. The elite boss's fighting style was very active, mainly in the use of different skills on the spot. However, the cooldown time of the skills was fixed. Originally, everyone had already figured out the cooldown time of the Three-Leaf Reaper skills, and they had a good sense of rhythm when they worked together. However, the sudden change of the Three-Leaf Reaper messed up everyone's rhythm. The reason why everyone was able to keep the Three-Leaf Reaper on the ground was because of Mingdu's Ice Mirror. Therefore, Mingdu's position could not be replaced. The boss still had 25% HP left. If Mingdu died, it would be difficult to fight later on. Just as the vines were about to wrap around Mingdu, Mingdu made a strange gesture with his left hand and pointed the staff in his right hand at Wang Yu. The next moment, Wang Yu appeared where Mingdu was standing. Wang Yu chuckled and pulled the boss in front of him. At the same time, he used Thunderstep with his right foot and kicked the Three-Leaf Reaper's chin from above. Bang! With a flash of lightning, the pollen on the Three-Leaf Reaper's head was kicked out by Wang Yu, and it was sent flying. Everyone rushed forward and surrounded it again, cleanly emptying the Three-Leaf Reaper's HP bar. Because the Three-Leaf Reaper's earth movement was too rogue, for safety's sake, everyone continued to hit the Three-Leaf Reaper's corpse like they were playing volleyball after the boss's HP bar was empty. Greater Heights looked at Xuanzhen's people who were throwing the boss's corpse around, and the corners of their mouths twitched. This was the legendary corpse torture. It was simply insane. Xuanzhen's people fought for more than a minute. Seeing that the Three-Leaf Reaper did not resist, they threw it on the ground. Seeing that the Three-Leaf Reaper did not enter the ground after landing, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. Their faces were full of excitement, especially Baiming Yuyu and Mingjian Daoxue, who were grinning from ear to ear. The Three-Leaf Reaper was an assassin-type boss, and the items it dropped were definitely for assassins. If the godly skill, Earth Movement, was dropped, they would be invincible. 1 against 1,000, just thinking about it made them excited. Who's looting the boss? Wuji asked everyone. Such an awesome boss had to be found with good luck. I'll loot it. Mingjian Daoxue and Mingdu were both eager to give it a try. Putting aside their characters, they were definitely extremely lucky. Mingjian Daoxue looked at Mingdu in disdain and said, "Why are you, a mage, getting involved in an assassin boss? Get lost. Tisk, with that luck of yours, you can loot the boss underwear." Mingdu didn't want to be outdone. Just as the two were looking at each other with disdain, Greater Heights stood up and said, "I think my luck is not bad. Can I loot it?" Oh! Hearing Greater Heights' words, Mingjian Daoxue and Mingdu's expressions froze, and they did not speak anymore. Greater Heights did not rely on intelligence to be a strategy expert. To be able to collect so many good items, his luck was naturally off the charts. He was probably the kind of main character who could even loot a dragon's egg from a chicken coop. Seeing that Greater Heights was about to kill the boss, the two of them naturally would not show off in front of an expert. "Don't worry, I only want the items in the last treasure chest. I won't fight with you." Seeing that no one from Xuanzhen said anything, Greater Heights explained, Tis, Yang not curled her lips. With your damage, you want to fight for the loot? Are people like you all so shameless? Hearing this, everyone looked at Peak of Perfection, then looked at Wuji and nodded. You are right, Wuji, Greater Heights. Greater Heights' luck was definitely not just for show. He reached out to loot the corpse of the Clover Reaper and pulled out a jet black dagger. This dagger was very strange. It was actually made of wood, and it was very light. Konoha's Dance Dagger, Gold, Attack, 110-180 mana, 20-60 plus 40 agility, plus 35 strength. Konoha's Source, passive skill. Attacks have a 30% chance of inflicting poison. Konoha's Dance, passive skill. Attack speed increased by 30%. Konoha's Fall, active skill. Can double jump. Class requirement, assassin level requirement. 55 item introduction. Made from the Herb Garden's divine wood. Light and nimble. This dagger's attributes were very average, but the poison effect was very rare. The double jump was also a good skill. In general, it was very suitable for the other players of this grade. However, for Mingjian Daoxue and Baiming Yoyu, it was very disdainful. After all, their weapons were much better than this dagger. Trash, sell it for money, Mingjian Daoxue said after looking at the dagger. How much? I'll take it. Greater Heights asked. Is 500 gold enough? Yes. No one expected Greater Heights to accept such a dagger. Although gold equipment was still rare, 500 gold was still considered the market price. It was not taking advantage of everyone. After all, the instance dungeon was opened by Greater Heights. Even if they took advantage of it, the people from the Quanjun sect would not say anything. After Greater Heights put away the dagger, he continued to look for the boss. This time it was a skill book. Vine Strike. Rare skill. Summons a vine to attack the target. Activates it again to instantly move to the back of the target. Class requirement. Assassin. This skill was the vine that the Shamrock Reaper had used just now. Although the instant movement was quite powerful, the vine was too obvious. It was also a flaw. However, it was still a very useful skill. At the very least, it was very cool. Roll, you too. Wuji looked at the skill book and said to Mingjian Daoxue and Baiming Yoyu. Famous Sword Dao Shui chuckled and rolled 100 points. F***CK. This luck. Baiming Yoyu wailed and chose to give up. Seeing that there was still one last time to loot, Baiming Yoyu clasped her hands and prayed. Gods, I'm willing to use 10 years of my life to exchange for this Earth Movement skill book. Soaring Spring mocked. Huh, are you kidding me? Earth Movement is a godly skill. How can a mere gold boss drop it? Earth Movement was the same as Soaring Spring's Summon Imps. They were both unique legendary skills. This kind of skill could only be obtained by completing quests. Not to mention gold bosses, even if it was a god boss, the drop rate was less than 1 in 1,000. Baiming Yoyu said, Nonsense. It's because I know it won't drop that I said that. Just as Baiming Yoyu finished speaking, Greater Heights shouted, F***CK. A godly skill dropped. Saying that, Baiming Yoyu sent a skill book to the party channel. Chapter 725. I don't want it. Seeing the skill book in Greater Mastery's hands, North Sea was about to cry. Meow's Greater Mastery was really lucky. He had actually obtained a godly skill. Getting a godly skill that she could use was something to be happy about. But thinking about what she had just said, Dark North Yu shuddered and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You don't want it? Then I'll take it. When Mingjian Daoxue heard this, he hurriedly went to take it. But Wang Yu, who was behind him, grabbed his collar. Do you still have conscience? Old Fish risked his life for this, Famous Sword Daoxue felt a chill down his spine. Ha, Old Fish, just take it. Greater Heights was a rather generous person. He immediately threw the skill book to Baiming Yoyu. Reach the Peak's action had redeemed a lot of his impression. It was a godly skill. Even if there was a prior agreement, it was still something that needed to be discussed. If it were someone else, it would be good enough if they didn't mock someone they had known for less than an hour. If it were the people from Chuanjin, they might even return the investment after taking the item. But not only did Greater Heights not ask for a second discussion, he didn't even waste any time and directly gave the skill to Bai Mingyu. This kind of magnanimity was unparalleled. "Ha, this kid is really interesting." Wu Ji couldn't help but laugh as he watched Reach the Peak walk towards the vine door. "Yeah, he's just a little full of himself and shameless." Yang Na also sighed. "To a smart person, these are not problems." Wu Ji explained as if he was a person of the same kind. "Old fish, let us see the skill." Wu Ji was blowing his own trumpet. Mingdu was very curious about the attributes of this skill that he had risked his life for. Dark North Yu displayed the skill's attributes with a complicated expression. Earth travel, legendary skill. Able to walk underground. Movement speed increased by 100%. Duration, 90 seconds. Consumes MP 300. Detection skills and items ineffective. Required class, rogue. Special attribute, strength of the earth. Plant and elven races recover 2% HP per second when using this skill, as expected of a godly skill. Although Bai Mingyu wasn't an elf, she had a full 90 seconds of earth elemental time. She also ignored anti-detection skills. In addition to her 2 stages of stealth, it was enough to make Bai Mingyu a terrifying assassin. At that moment, Greater Heights opened the door to the next scenario, and everyone walked in. After entering the second scenario, everyone was stunned. Normal instance dungeons always had one scene at a time. Even within the same map, there would be different buildings to differentiate the areas of the scene. However, after everyone walked through the vine door, the second scenario of the 100 Herb Garden was exactly the same as the first scenario. Even the position of the rocks and flowers at the entrance and the entrance of the next scenario were exactly the same. "Are you sure this is the second scenario?" Mingdu asked skeptically. This was the first time Mingdu had encountered such a situation after playing the game for so long. Greater Heights looked at the compass, then nodded and said, "Yes, from the direction of the compass. This is the second scenario." As he said that, Greater Heights placed the compass in front of everyone. Everyone looked down and realized that the first and second scenarios of this instance dungeon were actually different. Although the layout of the 2 scenarios was exactly the same, one was north-south, while the other was east-west. If it wasn't for the compass, they wouldn't have been able to tell just by looking at the reference. Meow, cutting corners, and flipping the scenario upside down to make it the second scenario. This instance dungeon designer was really despicable. Of course, if everyone continued to walk forward, they would realize that the monsters in the second scenario were different from the first. The monsters in the second scenario were called Berserk Man-Eating Flower and Starry Assassin. These 2 monsters were actually similar to the monsters in the first scenario. The only difference was that the Berserk Man-Eating Flower had a higher attack, and the Starry Assassin looked a little prettier. After the battle, just now, Greater Heights, Chuanjin, and the others had a better understanding of each other. Their teamwork was much more harmonious, and they were familiar with dealing with these monsters. Under the protection of Yinlao Air and Wang Yu, Greater Heights walked at the front with the compass in his hand. Everyone quickly walked out of the ghostly labyrinth area. The entrance to the next scenario appeared clearly in everyone's sight. To place one's pride said excitedly, "This hidden instance dungeon is not that great. The difficulty of the 2 scenarios is not high." That's right. I can't believe that a hidden instance dungeon is designed like this. Everyone agreed. The people from Chuanjin had seen all kinds of instance dungeons, but they had never seen one as simple as the Herb Garden. No, just when everyone was looking down on the designer's lack of imagination, Wang Yu suddenly said, "The feeling of being watched is getting stronger." Surveillance. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was shocked. They immediately recalled what Wang Yu had said in the previous scenario. Could it be that someone was really watching their team in the dark? Could it be under our feet? After witnessing the Clover Reaper's earth travel skill, Greater Heights no longer believed in the eye of truth in his hands. Hearing Wang Yu's words, he could not help but look under his feet. Seeing that Greater Heights was looking at the ground, the others also clamped their legs together and looked at the ground cautiously, afraid that something would come out from the ground. Seeing that everyone was so scared, Wang Yu said, "Everyone, don't be afraid. This surveillance is definitely not from underground, but it feels like it's right beside us. However, I'm sure that the person monitoring us is very far away from us and can't hurt us. What are you talking about? What a mess. Are you kidding us? Hearing Wang Yu's words, these people who did not know what was going on became even more confused. The surveillance is right beside us, but it's very far away. Isn't this contradictory? Wang Yu scratched the back of his head and said, I can't express that feeling, but I can tell you that we are temporarily not in danger. Mingdu was furious. F***CK. If there is no danger, why are you pretending to be a ghost? I'm scared to the point of peeing. Hurry up and pay for mental damage. You want money from me? Do you want to be beaten to the point of peeing? Wang Yu asked Mingdu with a cold face. Mingdu, old cow, beat him up. I don't like him for a long time. Yes, old Li, hurry up and pay 100 gold each. Otherwise, I'll beat you to death. Beat him. Beat him up. Everyone began to make a ruckus. Everyone stopped arguing. Seeing that Xuanjin was in a mess, Greater Heights shouted and then asked Wang Yu, since there is no danger now, it should be fine for us to continue moving forward, right? It's fine, Wang Yu said. Chapter 726. Under the protection of Wang Yu and Yinlao Air, Greater Heights was extremely safe. The team moved forward very quickly. After walking for nearly 7 or 8 minutes, everyone stopped again. This was because they had reached the end of the road, and the entrance to the next scene was strangely standing in front of them on the left. Seeing this scene, everyone was a little dumbfounded. Is your compass broken? Exquisite Dream asked after looking at the entrance to the next scene in the distance. Let me see. Greater Heights took out his compass and looked at it. Then, he turned around and said, There's nothing wrong with the direction. If there's nothing wrong, why are we here? Mingjian Daoxiu asked. Greater Heights touched his chin and thought for a while. We must have seen wrongly. Mingdu, who was at the side, said in extreme displeasure. We followed the compass all the way here, and you say that we saw wrongly? Are you King kidding me? Greater Heights pointed at the sun in the sky and said, Have you ever heard of a mirage? What's wrong? I think it should be a problem with the reflection or refraction of light, giving us the illusion that the door is in front of us. In fact, the door should be on the left. Greater Heights pointed in the direction of the entrance to the next scene and forcefully explained. F***CK. What kind of explanation is that? Xuanjin's group was quickly fooled by Greater Heights. King Hell. He even came up with the principle of light and shadow in a game. Was this guy reliable? Greater Heights said proudly. This is the most scientific explanation. You must believe in science. Mingdu's face was full of disbelief. Why do I feel that in a Western fantasy setting, science is superstition? Anyway, there's nothing wrong with my compass. Why don't you guys give me an explanation? Greater Heights asked. All right, you win. Everyone helplessly spread out their hands. There was no other way. In this situation, no one dared to say that their intuition was better than a compass. Seeing that the compass was pointing correctly, everyone could only continue forward. After walking for another 7 or 8 minutes, they reached the end of the road again. Without waiting for the rest of the Quanjin sect to ask any questions, the Peak of Perfection forcefully explained, the reflection of light can. You guys know about lunar eclipses, right? So it's not strange even if the door is behind us. Shall we continue? To place one's pride looked at Wuji and asked, Let's go. Wuji curled his lips. There was nothing wrong with the compass, so everyone was definitely heading in the right direction. As for why it was like this, Wuji also did not understand. He could only listen to Hu Guy, who had reached the peak of perfection. Another 7 to 8 minutes passed, and the Xuanjin members who had walked to the end of the road once again surrounded reaching the peak. They stared fixedly at reaching the peak. F***CK? Greater Heights grabbed the compass and threw it on the ground. I can't make this up anymore. The Xuanjin crowd. Chun Xiang walked over and picked up the compass. Then he used the compass to draw a few coordinates on the ground and said, These 2 coordinates are where we stopped just now. This coordinate is where we are now. The next location should be where we just came in. As he spoke, Chun Xiang marked another coordinate. Then, he used a line to connect the 4 coordinates into a rectangle. Hearing that, everyone turned their heads to look. As expected, they changed their direction again. Not far away was the ghost hits wall area. Everyone turned one round, and then the F***king turned back. F***CK. Could the ghost hits wall this time be the entire scenario? Greater Heights said in shock. It might not be ghost hits wall. Chun Xiang said, if I'm not wrong, the entrance to the scenario should be moving. The entrance can move by itself? Hearing that, everyone was dumbfounded. The entrance was a building in the scenario. Wasn't this thing a dead thing? How could it move? If that was really the case, the designer was really shameless. It's not strange, Chun Xiang said. We're in the water conservancy industry, so we never use specific geographical coordinates. Why? Chun Xiang said. Have you heard of the saying that the river flows east for 30 years and then west for 30 years? Even the mountains and rivers in reality change their positions, let alone the dungeon entrance in the magic world. Then what should we do now? Dao Shu and Ming Jian asked. Chun Xiang said, I think we can split into 4 teams. Each team will guard a coordinate. No matter what, one team will go in. Greater Heights said, no, I have to go in myself for this mission. That's difficult. Chun Xiang expressed his helplessness. The current method could only guarantee a 25% hit rate. In terms of probability, this 25% hit rate was even lower. Wuji, think of something, Chun Xiang said to Wuji. Wuji also shook his head, expressing that although Chun Xiang's method was bad, it was very practical. Just as everyone was at their wits' end, Wang Yu suddenly smiled. Hey, did you guys notice that the entrance to the next level looks quite strange? Strange? Like an egg? Look at the situation, and you're still blindly thinking about it? The moment Mingdu spoke, the originally serious scene suddenly became messy. You don't say, that entrance is round, it's quite ouch. Before Chun Xiang could finish, an arrow pierced through his head. Seeing this, the others were as quiet as cicadas in winter. Oh, my comrades, what's in your heads every day? Wang Yu pointed at Mingdu and Chun Xiang and said disdainfully, don't you feel that the entrance looks a little familiar? Familiar? Hearing Wang Yu say this, to place one's pride thought for a moment, then looked around and finally pointed at a strange plant in the grass not far away. Doesn't it look a little like this? Huh? This grass. Seeing the plant to place one's pride pointed at, everyone was slightly stunned. This grass looked very strange. It had no leaves, only a round fruit-like object at the top, very similar to the entrance not far away. Everyone hurriedly cast detection over. Eyeball grass, LV55, skill, detect monster introduction. Looks like a harmless plant. Holy **T. No wonder Wang Yu always felt that they were being watched. So there were eyes in the grass. Although the eyeball grass looked strange, its color was the same as the grass. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to notice it hidden in the grass. Only people like Wang Yu, who was observant, and to place one's pride, who was a kid who liked to look around, would notice it. That's right, this is it. I was wondering why it looked familiar. Seeing the eyeball grass on the ground, Wang Yu felt relieved that the problem he had been thinking about for a long time had finally been solved. At this time, Wuji suddenly said, everyone, check the grass carefully and pull out all of this thing. Why will we pull it out? It's harmless. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu was also an environmentalist. Greater Heights explained, didn't you see that this thing has a detection function? You said that someone was watching us just now. It should be through this thing. More importantly, that entrance is most likely this kind of grass. Chapter 7:27. The entrance could change its position freely, which meant that it had a mind of its own. Usually, the entrance would be the boss of the scene. After receiving Wuji's order, everyone threw themselves into the task of lining up the eyes. Although the eye grass was hard to detect, it was easy to spot due to its strange appearance. The group of people lined up from left to right and pulled out the eyeball grass one by one. Each eye grass had a detection range of about 500 meters, and there would be one every 10 meters. They kept pulling as they walked, and they lost count of how many grass they had pulled out. When they reached the center of the scenario, the whole scenario suddenly shook. The boss has been triggered. Everyone gather. Under Wuji's command, Yin Lao Air and Wang Yu quickly ran to reach the peak. The others also spread out and stood near the three of them. Despicable intruders, I will not forgive you. Just as everyone got into position, they heard an angry roar. Then, the center of the scene began to collapse. A huge eyeball drilled out of the ground. Everyone took a closer look and realized that this was the entrance that they had been chasing. Meow, this thing was actually a boss. It pretended to be the entrance and ran around. How shameless. Eye of the Elf, Kana, level 55, Dark Old Boss, HP, 5000000 MP, 1000000 skills, Endless Vision, Grass Summon, Tentacle Roots, Innate Abilities, Natural Recovery Background Introduction, the Loyal Guardian of the Herb Garden. It has great strength. The Eye of the Elf's body was incomparably huge. It was as tall as a few stories. Plant-type bosses were always this big. These kinds of bosses had always had high priority, and all of the players' crowd control skills were useless against them. Moreover, this type of boss had a special characteristic. It had a very long health bar. 5 million HP was something that everyone had only seen a few times. Of course, plant-type bosses also had a fatal weakness. Plant-type bosses were usually very big, so they were not very mobile. They were basically like wooden dummies in battle. To the players, as long as the boss was standing still, they basically won half the battle. Therefore, everyone was very excited when they saw the huge elven eye. The elf's eye was a non-elite grade boss. Apart from the roar that it had let out before it appeared, it had attacked everyone without saying a word. The elven eye's figure swayed, and dozens of eyeball grasses floated down from his body, slowly flying towards everyone. Following the principle of attacking whatever the boss summoned, when the eye grass flew towards them, everyone involuntarily attacked the eye grass. Archers had the longest range and the fastest trajectory. Yangna and Exquisite Dreams, 6 arrows were the first to hit the eyeball grass that was not too far away from the party. Boom! As soon as the arrow touched the eyeball grass, there was a loud explosion. The eyeball grass that was shot exploded, and the surrounding eyeball grass also exploded at the same time. The powerful impact of the explosion directly pushed everyone far away. As a shield bearer, Yin Lao Air was standing at the front, so he was the closest to the explosion. Yin Lao Air's HP dropped by 1/5 when the eyeball grass exploded. Seeing this scene, everyone in the party was in an uproar. Although Yin Lao Air was wearing a lousy shield, Yin Lao Air's equipment was definitely top-notch. Even with his tank-type equipment, he had lost 1/5 of his HP just from the explosion. If he had been hit by the explosion, wouldn't he have been blown to smithereens? Thinking of this, Wuji wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "We can't attack this thing. Everyone, be careful not to get hit by the explosion. There's something down there. Everyone jump." Before Wuji could finish his command, Wang Yu suddenly shouted and jumped at the same time. Wang Yu's and Wuji's commands overlapped, so everyone had no time to react. They only felt their feet sink. Looking down, they saw roots burrowing out of the ground and curling towards them. Apart from Wang Yu, everyone else was bound by the roots and was rooted to the ground. At this time, the elf's eye shook its body again, and dozens of eyeball bombs fell towards everyone. Seeing the eyeball grass flying towards them, everyone was dumbfounded. At first, they thought that this boss was just a standing boss that could be easily defeated. Who knew that this thing would be so cunning? Even if it couldn't move, it would still turn its opponents into standing eyeball bombs. Everyone had seen the strength of these eyeball bombs. If all of them fell, wouldn't they be wiped out? If they wanted to escape, they had to detonate these eyeball grass. However, everyone's limbs were bound by the roots, and only their heads could move. Wanting to attack the eyeball grass in the sky was a little difficult. As for Wang Yu, no one held any hope for him. Currently, the ground around them was covered in roots. There was no place for Wang Yu to stand. He was a melee class. Even if he came, he would just be sending himself to his death. The eyeball bombs were getting closer and closer. Just as everyone was about to be blown to death, Wang Yu raised his long sword and jumped diagonally, landing on Wuji's head. F***CK. Just you wait. Just as Wuji was about to curse, Wang Yu exerted force with his legs, stomping Wuji's curses back into his mouth. Then, he landed on Chun Xiang's head. After jumping 3 times, Wang Yu arrived in front of Yin Lao Air, who was at the very front. He released a chi wave with his left hand, and his body floated out. "You can't do this!" Reaching the peak shouted when he saw Wang Yu fly out. The eyeball grass flew in a fan shape. Just now, everyone was close to the elf's eye, so the density of the eyeball grass was much higher. So, when one eyeball grass exploded, it would affect the other eyeball grass, causing a chain of explosions. At this time, everyone had been blown back a certain distance. The density of the eyeball grass had decreased, so even if Wang Yu pounced and attacked, he would only be able to hit one eyeball grass. Right now, everyone's formation wasn't very concentrated. Hitting one eyeball grass was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. As reaching the peak said this, Wang Yu, who had flown out, had already jumped near the eyeball grass. Wang Yu formed a chi wave shield in his left hand to protect himself. At the same time, he thrust the long sword in his right hand forward and twisted, stabbing several eyeball grass in front of him. Boom! An opening appeared in the eyeball grass, and Wang Yu was engulfed by the heat wave. Boom! 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 Then there were a few more explosions, and 3 more openings appeared in the sky. The openings were connected, and the eyeball grass in front of everyone was cleared. Seeing the opening in the eyeball grass in the sky, reaching the peak swallowed the rest of his words. How'd he do it? Reaching the peak asked, dumbfounded. Chapter 728. Quadruple Leap was a skill that came with Wang Yu's Qigong. Just now, when Wang Yu was about to explode, he had jumped 3 times in a row. At the same time, he swung his sword and destroyed all the eye grass bombs around him. Quadruple Leap. Greater Heights couldn't help but frown. You've detonated more than 4. Wang Yu was a grandmaster of combat. He didn't have any warrior skills, so he could only detonate 1 bomb at a time. Not to mention Quadruple Leap. Even 14 wouldn't be enough to detonate so many bombs. Wang Yu laughed. A few more pokes, and they'll all explode. A few more pokes. Greater Heights was dumbfounded. Just now, Wang Yu had detonated more than 20 eye grass bombs. In the time it took for him to jump 3 times, he had stabbed the fist-sized bombs 20 times. Not to mention how insane his accuracy was, just the speed of his attacks was shocking. Just as he was about to reach the peak of perfection in his thoughts, Wang Yu jumped onto Mingdu's head and stepped on his head. Oldly, stop hiding it. I don't have a lot of light skill points. Mingdu said angrily, if you don't have a lot, then get down. Why are you stepping on me? At the same time, Mingdu shouted. His hands weren't idle. His left hand formed a strange incantation, and his right hand pointed downwards. Everyone instantly felt the ground beneath them heat up, and a sea of fire started burning beneath them. The roots of the elven eye were very afraid of fire. When they were burned by Mingdu's flames, they immediately withered and turned black. The frozen players regained their freedom. At that time, the elven eye's 3rd wave of eye grass was thrown down. Yang Na, an exquisite dream, one on the left and one on the right, flipped forward and shot a row of arrows at the falling eye grass, causing them to explode. A stationary boss was still a stationary boss. No matter how wretched its skills were, that was all there was to it. That player just now was just careless. After regaining his freedom, Wuji immediately ordered, melee players, block the way. Mages, guard the ground. Archers, watch the top. The old cow's protection is at its peak. Following Wuji's order, Chun Xiang summoned 6 evil demons and threw them in front of the team, forming a line of defense. Bai Ming Yoyu and Ming Jian Daoxue activated Swift Run and charged forward. Bao San, Yin Lao Air, and a place one's pride followed closely behind. The 5 of them stood in a circle around the eye of the elf. Elven Eyes, who was surrounded, shook his body, and his eyeball bombs and roots started attacking the 5 of them. However, Yang Na and Ling Long Meng's arrows once again flew over, detonating the bomb in the air. At the same time, Mingdu's flames rose and burned the roots that were wrapped around the five of them. Once again, the five of them broke free. After the boss's 2 waves of attacks, the 5 melee players' HP dropped slightly. Wuji casually threw out an AoE healing spell, instantly healing everyone back to full. Just like that, the 5 of them stood in Mingdu's flames and fought the boss with no worries under the cover of the archers. Reaching greater heights watched from the back, while Wang Yu, who was sitting at the side and watching the fun, thought that fighting the boss this way was too unskillful. Fire-type magic had a decent damage bonus against plant-type monsters. Coupled with the 5 of them attacking mindlessly, the Eye of the Elf's 5 million HP was really not enough. Not long after, the Eye of the Elf's HP dropped to 30%. Seeing that the boss's HP had dropped to 30%, Wang Yu reminded, "Be careful, its HP bar is red. Don't let it escape." As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, the Eye of the Elf shook slightly and quickly retracted into the ground. F***CK. Shut your crow's mouth. Everyone was slightly stunned and turned around to give Wang Yu the middle finger. "Are you blaming me? If you look at me again, the boss will come out from under your feet." Wang Yu cursed as he pointed at the 5 people behind Wuji. As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, the 5 people under their feet shook. The Eye of the Elf broke out from the ground behind Wuji. Immediately after, the boss's body shook and began to attack the 5 people behind with bombs and roots. F***CK. Old cow you be *TCH. Everyone, quickly hide behind the demon. Mingdu set fire to the bottom of his feet. The 5 people hurriedly ran behind Chun Xiang's demon while cursing. Yang Na turned around and shot an arrow, detonating the eye grass that had flown to the demon's side. The powerful shockwave engulfed Chun Xiang's demon, and the 5 range players were safely blown to the side of the 5 melee players. Seeing that his poisonous milk had almost killed the 5 people, Wang Yu hurriedly covered his mouth. Good things never happen, but bad things do. Greater Heights, who did not know the truth, almost knelt down in front of Wang Yu. He clenched his fists and said excitedly, "Oh my God! How did you do it? Stay further away, stay further away." Wang Yu's face turned red. She dragged Greater Heights of Zenith and retreated far away. Then, Greater Heights of Zenith saw a few arrows land where Wang Yu had been standing. Block! At this time, Chuanjin's group of 5 melee players turned around and rushed forward again, surrounding the Eye of the Elf. The previous wave of attacks seemed to be the Eye of the Elf's final struggle. After changing positions, the Eye of the Elf's eyes dimmed, and it no longer threw bombs and roots. It only moved its body symbolically a few times, and in the end, its health bar was kicked away by the place one's pride. The Eye of the Elf, whose health bar had been emptied, quickly withered and fell to the ground, leaving only a huge eyeball on the ground. Seeing that the boss had been killed, everyone quickly surrounded it. "Who's going to loot the corpse?" Mingdu asked as he rubbed his palms together. Everyone turned their attention to Greater Heights. In the previous scenario, everyone had seen Greater Heights' luck, so they were the most confident in letting Greater Heights loot the equipment. "Then I'll do as you say." Greater Heights saw that these guys wanted him to loot the equipment again, so he ran over to them. The system seemed to know that a stationary boss was not a challenge, so the production rate of the Eye of the Elf was pitifully low. It did not live up to its status as a dark gold boss at all, and there were only 2 chances to loot it. Very soon, Greater Heights looted the first item and posted its attributes in the channel. Eye grass, consumable, placing vision. Players who use this item gain a vision range of 1,000 to the location of the item and invisible units within 500 to 600 seconds. Detonate. After detonation, all targets within 200 meters will be dealt a fixed damage of 1,000. As everyone knew, a player's vision range had a fixed range. The eye grass's placing vision function was similar to the eyes in MOBA games, allowing players to gain vision of a specific location within a short period of time. However, The function of gaining vision in an RPG game was rather useless. After all, a mere 10 minutes of time was useless in a training game. However, anti-stealth items were rare, and the eye grass's ability to detect invisible units was a very valuable attribute. Chapter 729. Who wants it? Greater Heights raised the eyeball grass in his hand. Everyone shook their heads. Although the eye grass could wipe out invisible units, its range was fixed. It was far from being comparable to Eye of Truth, so it wasn't very practical. What if he could loot his own equipment? Wouldn't he have lost a chance? Give it to me. Wuji reached out and took the eyeball grass. Wow, Boss Wuji is a little noble this time. Seeing Wuji take the eyeball grass, everyone was a little surprised. Wuji called him Old Dog instead of Wuji Boss. Wuji snorted coldly. These be asterisk stars. Some people are using my name to do bad things. Don't think I don't know. I have to get something to protect myself. Huh. Wang Yu chuckled and turned to look at Mingdu. We saw this guy today. This guy was pretending to be Wuji to scare the passersby. TSK. Morals are getting worse day by day. The others clicked their tongues and sighed as they pointed at Radiant City with disdain. F***CK, Spring Dog, what right do you have to point at me? Mingdu gave Spring the middle finger. At this time, Greater Heights also took out the second item. God's Origin Wood X 5 God's Origin Wood. Rare material. Can be used to refine equipment. F***CK. When the others saw the God's Origin Wood in Greater Heights' hands, they could not help but sigh. What kind of luck is this? Should we pull him into Chuanjin and make him a professional looter? Rare materials were usually only valuable to those who needed them. For example, the materials that Wang Yu obtained from evildoers run wild were valuable, but he had to find a buyer before he could sell them. God's Origin Wood was different from other rare materials. It was currently the most sought-after item on the market, and it was also the most valuable item. It was not inferior to some of the best-selling rare items. There was no other reason for this. This thing had a special effect, and that was to lower the level of equipment. Currently, most of the equipment on the market was silver equipment. Gold and dark gold equipment could only be obtained from players who were higher levels than them, so the level requirements for equipment were relatively high. However, with the God's Origin Wood, equipment that originally had a level requirement that exceeded a player's own level would become suitable for the season. With enough tools, even a level 20 player could wear level 50 equipment. It should be known that low-level players had a higher chance of dropping good items when fighting monsters of a higher level. If a level 20 player were to equip level 50 equipment, their attributes would be much higher than a normal level 20 players. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake for them to defeat monsters of a higher level? From this, one could see just how precious this item was. Of course, the rarity of rare materials determined the value of the Divine Source Wood. Hence, this item was also known as something that was exclusively used by the rich. Reaching the peak of perfection, he had obtained 5 pieces in one go. His luck was simply heaven-defying. My, before reaching the peak of perfection, could ask who wanted it. Yin Lao Air immediately pounced on it. Yin Lao Air had a divine shield, but he could not use it now. He felt like a pervert who had seen a beautiful woman lying on his bed, but could not get hard. He was anxious and uncomfortable. At this moment, the God's Origin Wood was like Viagra to Yin Lao Air. The pure cow expressed her ignorance. No matter how valuable the God's Origin Wood was, it was useless to the people of Chuanjin, who had no use for it. Yin Lao Air was conscientiously carrying knives for everyone. Naturally, no one dared to compete with him. Hence, everyone chose to give up. Yin Lao Air hugged the God's Origin Wood and jumped excitedly. He almost rolled on the ground. After reaching the peak of perfection, looted the corpse. The eyeball of the spirits, I turned into a circular teleportation door. It was exactly the same as the teleportation door that everyone had been chasing. Clearly, this was the entrance to the next stage. Let's go in. Wuji patted Second Elder Yin, who was beside himself with joy. Yin Lao Air was in a state of excitement. He did not say anything and went in. Immediately after, a system notification was heard in the party channel. Your party member, Lao Air, has died and has been teleported out of the dungeon. Seeing the system notification, everyone was stunned. Then they shouted in the party channel, F***CK, second bro, what happened? After a while, Lao Air resurrected and replied, there were assassins at the entrance. I was instantly killed by them. How many? Reaching the peak of perfection asked. Lao Air looked at the combat log and said, 3. 3. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn, 3 assassins were able to instantly kill a tank like Lao Air. They must be at least boss level. Do any of you want to go in and take a look? Wuji turned around and asked the people behind him. Everyone shook their heads. If Lao Air was instantly killed with such a high amount of HP, the others would not be able to handle it. After all, other than 3 Bao, the others were all squishy classes. F***CKU, I'll use invincibility. What are you afraid of? Seeing that everyone was terrified in front of reaching the peak of perfection, Wuji felt a little embarrassed. I'll go. At this time, Wang Yu stood up and said, even if you have invincibility, you might not be able to clear the way out after some time. Going in a scout was not just to use invincibility to walk around. It was also try to lure away or kill the monsters at the entrance to open up a path for the people outside. If the monsters inside could instantly kill Second Bro, it was obvious that they were very strong. If they went in just like that, it would not bode well for them. Wuji nodded and said, all right, then be careful. Everyone knew how strong Wang Yu was. At this time, seeing that Wang Yu took the initiative to fight, naturally, no one questioned him. Wuji gave Wang Yu a holy light shield, and Wang Yu lowered his head and stepped into the teleportation gate. The scene in front of Wang Yu changed, and he entered a huge garden. The garden was huge, not only because of the area drawn in the circle, but also because everything in the garden was especially huge. The roses on one side of the teleportation gate were as big as a round table. The branches of the roses were like towering trees, and the thorns on them emitted a cold light. How is it, old cow? What's it like inside? Before Wang Yu could see the environment in front of him clearly, the others in the party channel started to talk curiously. So big. Wang Yu was just about to reply, but before he could even finish his sentence, a wave of killing intent came from behind him. At the same time, a gust of wind pierced towards the back of Wang Yu's neck. Wang Yu leaped forward, dodging the attack from behind. However, before Wang Yu's hands could touch the ground under Wang Yu suddenly melted, turning into a pool of magma. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu flipped to the right in midair, turning 180 degrees before landing steadily. At this moment, a green figure suddenly appeared behind him, the long thorns in its hands stabbing at the back of Wang Yu's waist. Wang Yu reached his right hand behind him, grabbing the long thorns in his hand. Then, he used the Black Dragon's tail version of Thunder Stamp, kicking the green figure in the chest. The green figure was directly kicked away. As for Wang Yu, because he did not wear gloves, the thorns on his palm did not cut a green wound. Immediately, Wang Yu's whole body turned green. System notification: you have been poisoned by the green wasp. Movement speed reduced by 40%, HP reduced by 2% per second. Chapter 730. At the same time, Wang Yu also saw what monsters were attacking him. These 3 monsters weren't very big. They were at least 2 heads shorter than Wang Yu. They had thin waists and large chests. They were yellow, red, and green respectively. They looked like humanoid monsters, but they looked quite different from humans. Not only did they have 2 extra hands, but they also had 2 antennae on their heads. They looked more like insects than humans. Yellow monster's uppermost 2 hands were a pair of huge pincers with a murderous aura. It stood in front of Wang Yu. Red monster's uppermost hands were 2 balls of fire, ready to go. It flapped its wings and floated in the air. Green monster's uppermost hands were a pair of spikes. It gave off a gloomy aura, and it stood beside Yellow Monster. Wang Yu casually used Detect, and the 3 monsters' attributes appeared in front of him. Yellow Scorpion Guard, LV-55, Gold Boss, Elite, HP. 100000 MP. 5000 skills. Yellow scorpion claw, floating shadow, yellow scorpion tail. Talents: strength, strangulation. Background introduction. One of the 3 flower fairy guards, powerful. Crimson Wasp Guard, LV55, Gold Boss, Elite, HP, 500000 MP. 100000 skills. Crimson Wasp Explosion, Lava Fountain, Crimson Wasp Tail. Talents: Rage, Flight. Background introduction. One of the 3 flower fairy guards, powerful. Green Ant Poison Guard, LV55, Gold Boss, Elite, HP, 500000 MP. 500000 skills. Green Ant Assassination, Green Ant Ambush, Green Ant Tail. Talents: Poison Shadow. Background introduction. One of the 3 flower fairy guards, powerful. Seeing the 3 flower fairy guards, Wang Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Although the 3 of them did not have much HP compared to the boss, they were all gold-ranked elites. Moreover, judging from the fight just now, these monsters were all agility-type monsters. One of them could even fly, which was a little disgusting. Due to Wang Yu's combat style, techniques were more important than stats. As a result, agility-based monsters had always been a headache for Wang Yu. At this moment, Wang Yu had been poisoned by the Cyan Ant Poison Guard. Wang Yu wasn't afraid of the continuous HP loss, but the 40% movement speed reduction was undoubtedly one disaster after another. What's more, Wang Yu is currently empty-handed. Facing 3 high-level gold elite bosses was indeed a little difficult. Wang Yu looked at the 3 monsters that circled in the sky and flew back again. He sighed and pulled out a dagger. This dagger was called Wind Tooth Blade. It was the dagger that Wang Yu stole from Bloodwolf. It was a dark gold weapon. Its stats all increased the assassin's skills. For an assassin, it was an amazing item. However, for Wang Yu, it was just a white dagger with relatively high attack power. Therefore, Wang Yu would rather not use it empty-handed. However, facing these 3 Cyan Ant Poison Guards with poison, it was obviously not reliable to be empty-handed. Wang Yu had no choice but to use a weapon to defend himself. After all, the higher the grade of the equipment, the more damage it could take. Just as Wang Yu pulled out his weapon, the Yellow Scorpion Guard was the first to fly in front of Wang Yu. Its 2 large pincers were aimed at Wang Yu's neck. It seemed like it wanted to snap Wang Yu's neck. Seeing the Yellow Scorpion Guard's attack, Wang Yu smiled helplessly. Floating Shadow. From a name, it sounded like a very cool skill. However, in terms of fighting skills, this was simply an incurably stupid way of attacking. Flying horizontally was full of openings. Seeing the Yellow Scorpion Guard fly over, Wang Yu's left hand calmly lifted the dagger up, blocking the Yellow Scorpion Guard's large pincers. At the same time, his right fist moved up and down, punching towards the Yellow Scorpion Guard. Because his target was the boss, Wang Yu's punch also activated the Fist Aura skill. His fist brought with it a huge afterimage as it landed heavily on the Yellow Scorpion Guard's chin. -12444 The Yellow Scorpion Guard received a critical hit. Because Grandmasters of Combat were natural 2-handed weapons users, Wang Yu's empty right hand didn't have any weapon damage, so the damage wasn't very high. However, this punch sent the Yellow Scorpion Guard flying. This was Wang Yu's goal. When outnumbered, the biggest taboo was to let the enemy close in. After sending the Yellow Scorpion Guard flying, Wang Yu's left hand, which was holding the dagger, moved behind him. With a clang, the dagger separated 2 spikes, and the Green Ant Poison Guard appeared behind Wang Yu. Wang Yu spun his feet and quickly turned around. His right hand condensed a chi wave and pressed it against the Green Ant Poison Guard's face. Using the recoil force, he floated back for some distance. Then, Wang Yu stomped back with lightning speed and hit the chest of the Yellow Scorpion Guard that was pouncing at him again. The poor Yellow Scorpion Guard was once again kicked far away. However, at this time, the place where Wang Yu had been standing in front of the Green Ant Poison Guard suddenly melted, and a cloud of magma sprayed out from the ground. Seeing this, Wang Yu smiled slightly. If he hadn't dodged in time, he would have been burned to death. One had to know that these 3 guys had frighteningly high attack power. Even Yin Lao Air, with his high health, couldn't withstand a wave of attacks. After landing, Wang Yu looked up at the Scarlet Bee magic guard in the sky. With a flick of his right hand, a rope flew out and wrapped around the Scarlet Bee magic guard's slender waist. Wang Yu grabbed the rope and leaped into the air, swinging towards the yellow scorpion guard like a swing. At the same time, he kicked out with both legs, landing on the yellow scorpion guard's face. It had to be said that Wang Yu's combat ability was absolutely unparalleled. The green ant poison guard deceleration was aimed at movement, but this brat directly played with an airplane. The deceleration effect didn't seem to have any effect at all. Poison deceleration, right? I have a mobile crane. Who the hell would use their feet to move? Bang, 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 bang. With a series of sounds, a string of damage values appeared above the yellow scorpion guard's head. In the end, it was stomped to the ground by Wang Yu's eagle stamp. After stomping the yellow scorpion guard to the ground, Wang Yu kicked off with both legs and swung into the air again, floating towards the green ant poison guard that was running towards him. When the green ant poison guard saw Wang Yu flying over, it raised its two long stingers and got into position. When Wang Yu floated over, it was ready to stab the lower half of Wang Yu's body. Who knew that Wang Yu would be even more sinister? He aimed the dagger in his hand at the green ant poison guard and threw it. The green ant poison guard hurriedly used both hands to block the dagger. Wang Yu took the opportunity to dive down, grab the dagger, and cut off the green ant poison guard's two long antennae. Without the antennae, the green ant poison guard's body swayed, and it almost lost its balance. At this time, Wang Yu had already landed behind the green ant poison guard. The dagger in his hand turned horizontally and stabbed into the green ant poison guard's temple. Poochie! -21457, a huge damage value floated above the green ant poison guard's head. Chapter 731. Wong. The green ant and yellow scorpion on the ground looked angrily at the scarlet bee in the sky, expressing their dissatisfaction towards the scarlet bee. Wong. The scarlet bee in the sky spread its hands and said, "What the F***CK can I do? I'm also in despair. My waist was broken. You guys are already like this. If I go down, won't I be beaten to death?" Fortunately, Wang Yu couldn't understand the conversation between these three monsters. Otherwise, just based on the fact that they were willing to sacrifice themselves, he would definitely pull them into the Quanjin sect and make them his teammates. Of course, as elite bosses, Yellow Scorpion and Green Ant weren't easy to deal with. In the first round, they accidentally suffered a loss from Wang Yu, so they became more cautious in their attacks. These two guys were extremely fast and attacked on the ground. They were much more autonomous than Wang Yu, who had a wire hanging from the sky. Relying on their agility on the ground, the two monsters chased Wang Yu relentlessly. Wang Yu was still poisoned and couldn't land on the ground. He could only fly around with the help of the scarlet bee to avoid the attacks of the green ant and yellow scorpion. Occasionally, he would find an opportunity to counterattack. Although he couldn't kill the three monsters, he successfully lured them away from the door. At this time, the Chuanjin players outside the door saw that Wang Yu hadn't replied and started guessing. Could Uncle Nyo have been killed? To place one's pride mumbled. Wuji said, "When did you go blind? Can't you see that old cow's name is still lit up in the team?" Then why isn't he replying? "I think he's busy and can't be bothered." Wuji said, when players were fighting, they usually couldn't send messages. Can't be bothered? There are times when old cow can't be bothered? Everyone said in disbelief. In their eyes, Wang Yu had always been strong beyond imagination. Even when facing a big boss, he wouldn't be forced to the point of not replying. That's hard to say. Didn't you hear Second Brother say that there are three monsters blocking the door? The old cow isn't talking right now, and he's not dead either. You should be holding them back. We should go in and help. Wuji said. Help! Hearing Wuji's words, everyone hesitated. It couldn't be helped. The impact of Yin Lao Heir's instant death on everyone was too great. No one dared to go in. Seeing that these guys didn't want to go, Wuji said, "Whoever goes in first will have priority over the equipment or items dropped by the boss later." First choice. Really? When everyone heard this, they were instantly energized. First choice allowed them to unconditionally choose any item or equipment that they fancied. In Xuanjin, a team that always prioritized rolling, first choice was undoubtedly a huge temptation. Of course, Wuji said, I mean what I say. Damn, holy shit. Uncle Neo and I are the closest. To place one's pride, jumped up and raised his hand. Chun Xiang swung his staff at to place one's pride's butt and slapped him to the side. Then he said righteously, as the oldest person in Xuanjin, your big brother, I can't watch on Neo fight alone. Mingdu clenched his fist. I'll always be your support. Everyone started to act tough. Enough, enough, enough. Shut the F***CK up. Wuji said in annoyance. Why are you guys messing around when it's the tank's job? Oldly, you trash. Stand at the back. As he said this, Wuji said to Bao San, who had been silent all this while, Bao San, you go in first. We'll go in when there's no danger. Bao San was the only warrior in Xuanjin. Yin Lao Air wasn't here, so only Bao San could go in and fight the wave. Of course, they couldn't rule out the possibility of Wuji abusing his position. Okay, Bao San nodded. Under the protection of Wuji's holy light shield, he stepped into the portal. As soon as he entered, Bao San saw Wang Yu flying around in front of him, as well as the yellow scorpion guards and green hornet poison guards chasing after Wang Yu's butt. These three monsters are actually elite gold rank bosses. After seeing the attributes of the three monsters, Bao San looked at Wang Yu strangely. His eyes were filled with admiration. Elite bosses had always been harder to deal with. Even if it was a wild elite boss, normal players might not be able to take it down without a small team, let alone one in a hidden dungeon. Wang Yu single-handedly took on 3 gold-rank elite bosses in a hidden dungeon and still had a chance to fight back. Even though Bao San and Wang Yu had been together for a long time, they couldn't help but be shocked when they saw this scene. At this time, Wang Yu also saw Bao San, so he shouted, Bao San, what are you looking at? Help me pull away that yellow one. It's too disgusting. Although the yellow scorpion guards weren't as mobile as the green ant poison guards, they had an aerial attack skill. In midair, Wang Yu wasn't very agile, and he had to dodge these things from time to time. It was quite annoying. Oh, I got it. Bao San replied and sent a message in the channel. Everyone come in. There are 3 bosses at the entrance. They've already been stalled by Old Cow. After sending the message, Bao San activated charge and rushed towards the yellow scorpion guards. The yellow scorpion guards were about to fly up and attack, but Bao San rushed up from behind and directly knocked the yellow scorpion guards to the ground. Fortunately, the yellow scorpion guards were small and had low priority. Otherwise, it would be quite difficult for a player to knock down a boss. After the yellow scorpion guards were knocked down, Bao San raised his 2-handed sword and smashed it with a collapsing mountain. Hurry up and stop. Seeing Bao San smash towards the yellow scorpion guards, Wang Yu suddenly shouted. However, Bao San had already jumped above the yellow scorpion guards. Even if he canceled the skill, it would be useless. Just when Bao San was confused as to why Wang Yu wanted him to stop, the yellow scorpion guards calmly turned around. The 2 pincers in its hands raised and firmly caught Bao San's 2-handed sword. Then, the pincers twisted and Bao San was directly twisted in midair, falling to the ground. System notification. Your weapon has been damaged by 5%. F***CK. What the hell? When Bao San saw the weapon damage notification, he was stunned on the spot. This small boss could even destroy people's weapons. It was too scary. At this time, the yellow scorpion guards suddenly jumped up, and its 2 pincers flew towards Bao San's head. Bao San originally wanted to raise his sword to block, but when he saw the yellow scorpion guard's 2 large pincers, he hesitated. Being pincered to death by the boss was only one death. Dying in a dungeon wasn't much of a loss. At most, he wouldn't be able to enter the next dungeon. However, if he used his weapon to block, the consequences would be unimaginable. In games, equipment, especially weapons, were much more important than life. Wang Yu's dagger wasn't his. If it broke, then so be it. Bao San still relied on this weapon to make a living. How could he bear to lose it? Seeing that the yellow scorpion guards were about to pinch Bao San to death, Wang Yu kicked the green ant poison guard away and leaped above the yellow scorpion guards. With an eagle stamp followed by a thunder stamp, he stomped the yellow scorpion guards into the ground. At this time, the ground under Bao San's feet suddenly melted. A stream of magma spurted out and burned Bao San into white light. F***CK. Chapter 732. Oh, Uncle Nyo, are you flying a plane? Just as Wang Yu was feeling depressed, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Wang Yu was overjoyed. He turned around and saw To Place One's Pride and the others who had just teleported in. To Place One's Pride pointed at Wang Yu, who was flying around, and said excitedly, Uncle Nyo, teach me. I also want to fly a plane. Chun Xiang disdainfully said, Fly my ass. You're the one fighting. Go and help. As he spoke, Chun Xiang raised his staff and rushed over. With a wave of his hand, 6 demons blocked in front of the yellow scorpion guard. Chun Xiang's demons were all very sturdy. The yellow scorpion guard was like a dwarf in front of them, and his path was immediately blocked. The yellow scorpion guard was surrounded by demons, but he didn't panic at all. He waved his pincers and clamped onto the thigh of one of the demons. The demon didn't even have time to groan before it was clamped into 2 puffs of smoke. Then, the yellow scorpion guard rushed forward and rushed out of the encirclement. At that time, the dark barrier rose up and locked the yellow scorpion guard in place. To Place One's Pride also rushed in front of the yellow scorpion guard and used a flash chain kick, kicking the yellow scorpion guard back. To Place One's Pride was quite talented. With Wang Yu's guidance, his skills were quite good. As he kicked the yellow scorpion guard away, he activated Burst Fist. The Thorn of Despair in his right hand flashed and stabbed into the yellow scorpion guard's eye. Flash Shadow Chain Kick's damage was off the charts. Coupled with this critical damage, Ecstasy successfully pulled the yellow scorpion guard's aggro onto himself. Buzz! Buzz! The yellow scorpion guard wailed and clamped down on To Place One's Pride's right arm with its pincers. To Place One's Pride hurriedly retracted his hand, but he was still half a beat too late. One of his fingers was clamped off. His health bar instantly turned red, and he was in a bleeding state. Fortunately, Wuji's healing landed in time. To Place One's Pride didn't die. F***CK. Seeing that the yellow scorpion Imperial Guard attack was so high, Wuji and the other 2 felt their hearts palpitate. Meow just being rubbed against and he was almost killed. What would happen if he was pinched? At the same time, everyone was shocked by Wang Yu's strength. In terms of attributes, the yellow scorpion guard clearly had the lowest attack out of the 3 monsters. If the monster with the lowest attack had such damage, then what about the other 2? In other words, as long as Wang Yu was attacked by any one of the 3 bosses, he would die. These 3 bosses were all agility-type monsters. Despite being surrounded by 3 agility-type bosses, they hadn't even been hit once. What kind of technique was this? Chick, get out of the way. While the 3 of them were still in a daze, Wang Yu shouted and kicked To Place One's Pride's back. To Place One's Pride was kicked to one side, while Wang Yu borrowed the momentum to jump to the other side. Boom! At the same time, To Place One's Pride's previous position was hit by a burst flame. Immediately after, the ground melted and magma spewed out. Old Li, Old Meng, the ones above. Wuji threw a holy light upwards, marking the Scarlet Wasp Magic Guard. Yang Na and Exquisite Dreams arrows, as well as Mingdu's Explosive Lightning, were all thrown over, forcing the Scarlet Wasp Magic Guard to retreat. With the help of the other members of the Quanjin sect, Yellow Scorpion and Scarlet Peak, the pressure on Wang Yu was greatly reduced. She no longer needed to swing around. She threw away the rope in her hand and jumped toward the green ant poison guard. When the green ant poison guard saw Wang Yu land, it raised its stinger and stabbed at Wang Yu. When Wang Yu fought 3 at once, the green ant poison guard couldn't even take half a hit from Wang Yu. How could it succeed now? Wang Yu's figure flashed and appeared behind the green ant poison guard. The green ant poison guard's attack missed. Wang Yu switched the dagger to his right hand. His left hand wrapped around the green ant poison guard's head, and his right hand stabbed the dagger into the green ant poison guard's throat. 17455. Immediately after, Wang Yu grabbed the dagger and pulled it to the side. Dash 221452 damage values floated up, and the green ant poison guard's health dropped by a small chunk. The two stingers in its hands shot up, stabbing toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu smiled and let go of the green ant poison guard's head. He raised his foot and stomped on the green ant poison guard's back with thunderbolt stomp. The green ant poison guard fell forward and disappeared. Seeing the green ant poison guard disappear, Wang Yu calmly knocked his dagger to the right. Thud! With a muffled sound, Wang Yu's dagger struck the green ant poison guard's head. The green ant poison guard revealed itself, and the stinger in its hand swept towards Wang Yu. The green ant poison guard was too short. Wang Yu didn't know whether to lower his head or jump, so he simply lay on the ground. At the same time, he used Ferocious Tiger Strike to grab the green ant poison guard's leg. With a fierce tug, the green ant poison guard lost its balance and fell to the ground. At that moment, Wang Yu got up, sheathed his dagger at his waist, grabbed the green ant poison guard's leg with both hands, and swung it toward the nearby rose branch. The third stage's rose branch wasn't just any ordinary rose. The thorns on the branch were incomparably sharp, and the thickest part was as thick as the green ant poison guard's waist. Wang Yu's swing was very solid, and the large thorns pierced through the green ant poison guard's chest, directly hanging it from the rose's thorns. The green ant poison guard was half dead after being harmed by Wang Yu. The yellow scorpion guard and the scarlet bee poison guard weren't having a good time either. Compared to the 2-meter-long greatsword, the Grandmaster of Combat's gloves were much more practical against the yellow scorpion guard. After all, the shorter the weapon, the more flexible the fighting style. At the same time, the yellow scorpion guard wouldn't be able to catch it so easily. From this, it could be seen that being long had its advantages and being short had its advantages. Next time, if anyone said they were short, they could retaliate. I may be short, but I'm fast. To place one's pride, the agile guy, and Chun Xiang's control skills, coupled with Wuji's support, the yellow scorpion guard was suppressed in a fixed circle. As for the scarlet bee demon guard, this guy was a complete tragedy. When Wang Yu was alone, this guy helped Wang Yu, but now that Wang Yu threw him away, he immediately became the target of everyone's attacks. The 3 ranged classes in Xuanjin were all slippery like loaches. Yang Na, needless to say, had always been ridiculously strong. Coupled with the archer's evasion skills, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage even if there were a dozen archers, let alone a mage boss with preset skills. Mingdu knew how to double teleport, and his current position was especially wretched, right below the scarlet bee demon guard's blind spot. It was so despicable that it made people's hair stand on end. Exquisite Dream was even more ridiculous. She released a circle of shadows in all directions. Not only was her shooting rate fast, she could also switch back and forth between the shadows. It was also so unrestrained that it made people want to vomit blood, especially the control effect of the shadow binding arrow. From time to time, she would immobilize the scarlet bee demon guard, turning it into a fixed target high up in the sky. The scarlet bee demon guard's attack was very high, and it could instantly kill someone. However, no matter how high its attack was, if it couldn't hit the enemy, it was all a big joke. At this moment, the Scarlet Bee Demon Guard really wanted to go down, but when he saw the 3 thieves on the ground, he thought about it again and again. Between being attacked by 6 people or being attacked by 3 people, he chose the latter. There was no one else who could do this as a boss. Just as the 3 bosses were about to be beaten to death, at this moment, a delicate and clear voice rang in everyone's ears. Chapter 733. When everyone heard this, they turned around and saw a beautiful girl floating in the air. The girl had eyes as clear as autumn water, skin as smooth as snow, a voluptuous figure, a slender waist, and long legs. Her body was covered in flower petals. The system's usual style of revealing clothing had a hazy beauty to it, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Flower Fairy, Flower Whisperer, LV55, Dark Old Boss, Epic, HP, 2000000 MP, 2000000 skills, 100 flowers bloom, 100 herbs grow, fairy track of green fields, flower language shackles. Talent, Recovery background introduction. An exiled fairy flower whisperer. She was once an elite among the elves and the heir to the elf queen. She grew thousands of flowers and was known as the 100 Herb Flower Fairy. 100 Herb Flower Fairy, I know this person. Seeing the title of Flower Whisperer, Chun Xiang said excitedly. Fisk, aren't you the one who fell in love with the seventh apostle? Everyone looked at him with disdain. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy was a famous hero in the background story. During the first invasion of the Dark Faction, she, as the next elf queen, fell in love with the seventh apostle. The two of them had wanted to elope and escape the war, but the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy suddenly changed her mind and provided the Light Faction with battle opportunities, defeating the Dark Army in one fell swoop. The previous seventh apostle also fell because of this. As a fallen elf, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy was not recognized by the Tree of Elves, so she went into exile. When players join the Light Faction or Dark Faction, they will be forced to listen to this history. It was quite ironic. The seven apostles were each more sinister than the last, and in the end, they were betrayed. It was just like the saying, you have to pay for what you've done. At the same time, it also taught us that love was a rotten thing that could make people lose their rationality and become stupid at any time. Wang Yu was dumbfounded. Why don't I know if you all know? Wuji, what faction are you in? Wang Yu. Other people joining a faction was like taking an oath to join a party. There were all kinds of ceremonies, but Wang Yu joining a faction was like a joke. Even he was confused. At this moment, the 100 Herb Fairy spoke again. Intruders, no matter how you found this place, I advise you to turn back, or I will personally turn you into fertilizer for the 100 Herb Garden. Ignore her. Wuji ordered, hurry up and kill these three fellows. As the final boss, the 100 Herb Fairy was definitely not to be trifled with. Reaching greater heights, still had to sneak over to open the chest, so he had to kill the three guards first. Furthermore, who was the 100 Herb Fairy? Did she think that they would stop just because she told them to? The players weren't stupid. Following Wuji's command, not only did everyone not stop, but they also increased their damage output. How dare you? Seeing that everyone was ignoring her, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy attacked. With a shout, the entire scene turned into a sea of flowers. Peach blossoms and pear blossoms covered the sky, protecting the three boss guards. Layers of chrysanthemums and lilies flew towards everyone. F***CK. What a fierce fellow. Everyone had seen many bosses, but they had never seen one attack with such momentum. The effect of this skill covered the entire scene. It was obvious that the entire map would be wiped out with a wave of her hand. But thinking about it, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy was an ancient character from the first Darkness invasion. It was no big deal that the older the person, the stronger the person. Seeing countless flower petals falling from the sky, Wang Yu spread his fists and kicked, knocking all the petals that were flying towards him to the ground. These petals can attack. Seeing that Wang Yu was able to knock down the petals, the others were overjoyed. They waved the weapons in their hands and started attacking the petals that were flying towards them. Although they didn't have Wang Yu's impenetrable punching and kicking skills, the petals weren't moving very quickly. Their attacks were still effective, and more than half of the petals were knocked down. After a round of flower rain, all of them actually survived. Oomph. Stubborn. The 100 Herb Flower Fairy snorted and waved her hand again. The grass on the ground started growing wildly, attacking everyone like poisonous snakes. F***CK. It's another skill that can wipe out the entire map. Everyone run. Wuji shouted and flew into the air. Spring Xiang turned into a cloud of black mist and followed closely behind. Mingdu's figure flashed, and he flew to the top of the flower branch. Seeing this, Linglong Dream raised her crossbow and shot an arrow at the flower branch near Mingdu, creating an image. Then, she changed her position and flew to Mingdu's side. Mingdu's body trembled, and he almost fell down. He quickly used his staff to block the thorns on the flower branch. Wang Yu also activated his Qigong and jumped up, stepping on the flower branch. But at this moment, Wang Yu heard a place one's pride shouting, "Uncle Nyo, save me!" Although the people of Chuanjin had their own ways of escaping, They were the only ones who could escape in this situation. To place one's pride's Yang Na and Ming Jian's Dao Xue were the type that couldn't fly. Wang Yu grabbed the branch and jumped down. To place one's pride, made a grabbing motion with his left palm. Thank you, Nyo. To place one's pride didn't get to finish his excited words. Wang Yu suddenly raised his hand, and the white light from the cloud, grasping hand brushed past to place one's pride's head. F***ck, Uncle Nyo, you missed. To place one's pride cried bitterly. I didn't miss. Ladies first. Wang Yu replied calmly, then pulled back with his left hand. To place one's pride saw Wang Yu dragging Yang Na up the tree. To place one's pride cursed. F***ck. Choosing a lover over a friend? Be careful, or I'll tell Sister Xian. Hearing this, Wang Yu's expression changed greatly. She loosened her left hand and let go of Yang Na. Luckily, Yang Na's skills were not bad. She grabbed the flower branch and jumped up. Otherwise, even if she wasn't killed by the 100-grass flower fairy, she would have been killed by Wang Yu. What did you say, you brat? Wang Yu roared. To place one's pride couldn't hear him. He and the other 3 assassins were wrapped up in the grass like a cocoon. Only a pair of eyes could be seen blinking as they looked outside. Ranged classes attacked the 100-herb flower fairy. Wuji, who was flying in the sky, fired a holy light at the 100-herb flower fairy's head. Mingdu raised his staff, and a thick thunderstorm descended from the sky, smashing into the 100-herb flower fairy's head. 27441, a huge damage value floated up, successfully attracting the 100-herb flower fairy's attention. Just as Exquisite Dream and Yang Na were about to attack, they heard the 100-herb flower fairy yell, "Despicable intruder, you will pay the price." Immediately after, a green light flew towards Mingdu. Mingdu stood on the branch, so his movement range was pitifully small. He didn't have the ability to jump up and down like Wang Yu, so he couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the green light. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, Mingdu disappeared. F***ck. Oldly, where did you go? Chun Xiang hurriedly asked in the chat. Did he get sent to another dimension? After receiving the message, Mingdu looked up and his eyes widened. Chapter 734. Mingdu raised his head and his eyes widened. Could it be that what entered his eyes was pink? Happiness came so suddenly. What? Where are you? Send me your coordinates. Chun Xiang asked. Mingdu thought for a moment and said, If I'm not wrong, I should be under the 100-herb flower fairy skirt. Archers were an agile profession, so their equipment was usually close-fitting leather armor, which was short and neat. So, Mingdu could guarantee that he wasn't under the 2's feet. After all, there was no one else who would wear such a skimpy short skirt here, other than 100-herb flower fairy. When the Chuanjin people heard this, they hurriedly looked under the 100-herb flower fairy. Sure enough, there was a palm-sized person in a black robe at the foot of the 100-herb flower fairy, looking up. Wuji and Chun Xiang's faces were full of excitement, and their eyes flashed with envy. Why wasn't I the one who became small? Seeing this, Wang Yu jumped down and shouted, Old Li, don't be afraid. I'm here to save you. Mingdu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. F***ck. Who told you that I'm afraid? In the time it took to speak, Wang Yu had already jumped under the 100-grass flower fairy. She casually scooped Mingdu into her hands and threw him behind her. Mingdu wailed, Old cow, you big bastard. Wuji and Chun Xiang gloated. Old cow, you're so loyal. Ignorant. Seeing that Wang Yu had rescued Mingdu, the 100-herb flower fairy's face turned cold. As she shouted, her hands turned into long vines, wanting to whip Wang Yu. Wang Yu jumped into the air and rushed forward, cutting in front of the 100-herb flower fairy. He gently pushed up with one palm, forcing the latter half of the 100-herb flower fairy's sentence back into its stomach. Then, the fingers of his other hand, like a knife, suddenly stretched forward and stabbed heavily into the 100-herb flower fairy's throat. 421-12444. Although the 100-herb fairy was an epic boss, it was a nature class. It mainly relied on healing, crowd control, and other support skills. Although its skills were beautiful, its damage was much weaker than that of magic class. Its melee combat ability was pitifully low in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu jabbed 100 Grass Flower Fairy's throat and immediately muted her for a short period of time. The muting effect didn't last long, but it successfully knocked 100 Grass Flower Fairy down from the sky. The two viper-like whips in 100 Grass Flower Fairy's hands also disappeared. As the two of them fell, Wang Yu grabbed the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's hair and pulled her down. Her knee glowed as she rammed into the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's face. The powerful impact of a knee caused the 100 Herb Flower Fairy to be temporarily stunned. At this time, the two had already landed. Wang Yu, who had returned to the ground, grabbed the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's head with both hands and flipped it over. Then, he held the back of the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's head with his left hand and clenched his right fist into the shape of a phoenix's eye hammer. Punch after punch rhythmically rained down on the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's face. As an epic boss, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy naturally didn't want to be beaten up like this. She struggled to get up, but Wang Yu's left hand pulled down with his tiger claw, and the 100 Herb Flower Fairy was dragged down again. Wang Yu's move of holding the head and hitting the face belonged to the Wing Chun's Japanese punch. His right hand was fast and ruthless, using his powerful attack to interrupt the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's attack rhythm. His left hand, with the help of various grab skills, firmly held the target, not letting her get up. The 100 Herb Flower Fairy was a mage class that needed to cast spells to attack. Even if it was a close combat class, with its head held by Wang Yu's hands, it could only close its eyes and wait for death. Under Wang Yu's heavy punches, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's health bar dropped rapidly. What was even more frightening was that the originally beautiful Flower Fairy was beaten beyond recognition by Wang Yu's punches. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbfounded. Wang Yu's suppressive nature was so strong. Indeed, it always gave people a feeling of this is the end at any time. Especially Zenith. This guy had traveled extensively and had seen many things, but he had never seen such a ferocious fighting style. Everyone said that grandmasters of combat were a useless profession. Damn it, whoever said that would meet this guy in front of him. Zenith thought viciously, is this animal so cruel to women? Ling Longming's mouth twitched as she looked at the violent Wang Yu. Cold sweat flowed down her face and her mouth twitched. Spring Xiang said, don't worry, the old cow said he doesn't hit women. He doesn't hit women? Then what is he doing now? Exquisite Dream pointed at Wang Yu, who was beating up the 100 Herb Flower Fairy. Oh, this means that in the old cow's eyes, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy is not a woman. Wuji said, then glanced at Exquisite Dream and said, so, Old Ming, you have to be more feminine in the future, or else the old cow will beat you up one day. Exquisite Dream shivered and said, you dare say that I'm not a woman? What did you say? Wuji looked at Wang Yu, then turned back to Exquisite Dream. Exquisite Dream pouted and said, you dare say that I'm not a woman? F***CK. This was the first time they heard Exquisite Dream speak like this. Everyone in Quanzhen felt a chill down their spine, and goosebumps appeared all over their bodies. Mingdu wiped his sweat and said, you'd better stop using your magic, or the mad cow will kill you first when it comes back. F***CKU. While Quanzhen and the others were talking, Wang Yu had already beaten up the 100 Herb Flower Fairy. In less than a few minutes, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's HP of several million had been reduced to less than 30%. At this moment, a green shield appeared on the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's body, and Wang Yu was immediately sent flying. In midair, Wang Yu adjusted his balance and somersaulted backwards, landing steadily. At the same time, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy floated in the air again. Ignorant intruder, you have successfully angered me. Elves were elves after all, of high quality. If it was a boss from the Dark Faction, it definitely wouldn't have been so easily scolded. As the 100 Herb Flower Fairy spoke, a golden light lit up on its body. May the god of nature bestow upon me the power of the earth. As the 100 Herb Flower Fairy chanted, the yellow scorpion guard that was originally wrapped in flower petals broke free. Then, its entire body transformed into a huge tail hook that buffed the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's body. The 100 Herb Flower Fairy's HP, which had been emptied by Wang Yu, was once again full. At the same time, a golden buff appeared on its body. Earth Protection. The Flower Whisperer has received the praise of the earth and obtained the protection of the earth. Strength attribute increased by 300%. Physical attack and defense increased by 100%, and super armor effect. F***CK. It's full HP again? Seeing the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's HP return to full, everyone's hearts immediately tensed up. Chapter 735. Earth Protection's buff was clearly meant for melee combat. Not only did it increase one's defense, but it also increased one's strength and attack attributes. The buff's hegemonic armor prevented one from being disrupted by non-grab type crowd control skills. In summary, the 100 Herb Fairy's transformation was very targeted. It was meant to increase her close combat ability, so that she wouldn't be ravaged like before. Thinking up to here, everyone couldn't help but sigh. A magic-type boss was given a powerful close combat buff. It was clear that the 100 Herb Fairy was deeply affected by close combat classes. Just what kind of sin did Wang Yu commit? Not bad. Seeing the transformation of the 100 Herb's Fairy, Wang Yu was secretly shocked. She then took out 2 swords with long handguards, one long and one short. Is this a fork? Exquisite Dream had known Wang Yu for a long time, but this was the first time she had seen Wang use long and short swords. Mingdu said, "I heard that it's a sword." Sword? You call this a sword? Exquisite Dream was slightly stunned, a bit incredulous. In the minds of normal people, there were only 2 types of swords. One was the Eastern style of one-handed swords, and the other was the Western style of two-handed swords. No matter how the style changed, it couldn't be separated from the two. The 2 weapons in Wang Yu's hands looked more like forks. If they were called swords, it would be a bit strange. Mingdu said, "Old Cow is a professional when it comes to weapons. Whatever he says is what it is." TCH. Exquisite Dream heard this and rolled her eyes. Invaders, face the wrath of the earth. At this moment, the 100 Herb Fairy angrily roared. Her hands turned into vine whips, flying through the air towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu jumped back lightly, dodging the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's whip. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy's attack missed, and just as she was about to pull back her other whip, Wang Yu suddenly bent down, the short sword in her hand sticking close to the ground, catching the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's long whip. Then, with a twist, the 2 guards of the short sword were like forks rolling instant noodles, wrapping around the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's whip. Wang Yu wrapped himself around the whip, but the 100 Grass Flower Fairy had already pulled her hand back. Wang Yu's whip was pulled to her side. "You!" The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy was shocked to see Wang Yu. Just as she was about to say something, Wang Yu's hand, which was holding the long sword, had already reached out and stabbed the sword right into the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's eye. Wang Yu had borrowed the power of the 100 Herb Fairy. The boss's strength was increased by 300%, and her priority was surprisingly high. Of course, the higher her priority, the more damage she dealt to him. Shameless bastard. From the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's pitiful cries, it could be seen how much pain Wang Yu's attack was. Wang Yu's cruel actions directly raised the hatred of the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy to the highest level. The furious 100 Herbs Flower Fairy swung the whip in her right hand that was wrapped around Wang Yu, and Wang Yu was casually thrown away. Being thrown away by the boss with such force, if it was any other player, they would have been thrown far away. However, Wang Yu used a clever move, one long and one short hand to cross each other, blocking the whip. As a result, it was as if Wang Yu was stuck to the whip and didn't fly away. Instead, he was firmly stuck to the whip. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy looked at Wang Yu in shock, and the whip in her left hand came flying towards him. "If you don't want to go down, then I'll whip you to death." Seeing the whip flying towards him, Wang Yu didn't panic. He rolled on the ground, dodging the whip, and immediately activated his Qing Gong to increase his speed. In an instant, he was in front of the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy. Before the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy could pull back her whip, Wang Yu jumped over the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's left shoulder and landed behind her. Then, Wang Yu turned around and circled around the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's right hand whip was like a girl's yarn, and Wang Yu was like a needle threading. He lowered his head and circled around the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's ribs, crotch, and back. After a few turns, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's right-hand whip was wrapped around her body by Wang Yu. In a panic, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy waved her left hand, and the whip continued to attack Wang Yu. Wang Yu stuck the short sword in his hand on the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's waist, stabilizing the whip. Then, with a twist and turn of the long sword, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's left-hand whip was also wrapped in her hand. After wrapping the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's left-hand whip, Wang Yu was still the same as before. He jumped behind the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy, twirling, binding, and threading. The short sword in Wang Yu's hand nimbly weaved through the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's body. In a short while, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy was firmly bound by Wang Yu. Under Wang Yu's binding, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's beautiful figure was completely revealed. Damn! The Chuanjin students were extremely agitated. As expected of the old cow. He's very professional. The excitement on Exquisite Dream's face was no less than the others. She said excitedly, if only there were candles. Yana was dumbfounded. What do you mean? Exquisite Dream chuckled. You've never done this before, right? Let me tell you. Seeing Exquisite Dream explain the binding method to Yang Na in the chat, the Chuanjin students wiped the sweat off their foreheads. They thought to themselves, is this demon really a woman? As the saying goes, using softness to overcome hardness. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's strength had increased, her attack had increased, and she even had super armor. She had thought that this would be enough to restrain Wang Yu. Who would have thought that Wang Yu's combat talent was so high that it was unimaginable? If the rope had been Wang Yu's own, with the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's boss body and absolute strength, it would have been easy for her to break free. However, Wang Yu was using the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's own hands. Everyone could try wrapping their own hands around their own body to see if they could exert any force. In addition, Wang Yu only knew how to tie the rope in a simple and crude way. There was no way to break free. Despicable invaders, I will kill all of you. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy was so aggrieved that her tears were about to fall. Wang Yu wasn't someone with a heart of stone. He couldn't bear to hear a woman cry. So he took out a tattered piece of cloth, rolled it into a ball, and stuffed it into the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's mouth to shut her up. Then he snapped his fingers at everyone. Beat her up, although they didn't have a whip or a candle. To be able to bully an epic boss that couldn't even fight back was an experience that had never been experienced before. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy continued to struggle under everyone's attacks. However, the more she struggled, the more uncomfortable it became. The more she struggled, the more excited the Chuanjin players became, and the more vicious their attacks became. After a round of beating, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's HP dropped to 30%. Following a crisp sound, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's Golden Earth Ward was shattered by everyone and fell to the ground. Then, the green barrier on the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's body lit up again. Dodge! Under Wuji's command, everyone returned to their original positions. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy stood up for the second time after the vine whips that were binding her returned to the state of two hands. Chapter 736. The 100 Herb Flower Fairy raised her hands, and the sky changed color. The petals on the Scarlet Wasp Demon Guard peeled off layer by layer, then turned into a giant red stinger, stabbing towards the 100 Herb Flower Fairy. The moment the red stinger touched the 100 Herb Flower Fairy, it was like a snowflake falling onto a flame. It quickly melted into the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's body. Then, the 100 Herb Flower Fairy's hair and clothes turned red, and its eyes danced like flames. Blessing of 10,000 flowers. The Flower Whisperer has received the blessing of 10,000 flowers. Intelligence increased by 300%. Magic damage increased by 100%. 100% magic resistance ignored. It revived again, seeing the 100 herb flower fairy's health bar full again. Even Wang Yu couldn't help but be moved. This boss was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. It was beaten down time and time again, and it was getting stronger and stronger each time. Even the 5 cockroaches fighting the 12 palaces weren't like this. This time, the 100 herb flower fairy was much stronger than before. This was because the 100 herb flower fairy was an intelligence-type boss. The increase in strength was far inferior to the increase in intelligence. With 3 times the intelligence, double the magic damage, and a special effect that ignored magic resistance. Even a naked LV-55 magician would be able to one-shot someone. Not to mention the 100 herb flower fairy herself was an LV-55 epic boss. Seeing the state of the 100 herb flower fairy, everyone couldn't help but sweat in their palms. Despicable martial artist, you will pay for your actions. The 100 herb flower fairy was probably really angry this time. It completely ignored everyone else and directly targeted Wang Yu. Whoosh! Following the angry roar of the 100 grass flower fairy, an enormous fireball flew towards Wang Yu with a whistling sound. This was the first time Wang Yu had seen such an arrogant magic. As the saying goes, one person can defeat 10 people. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, he didn't dare to take this attack head-on. He leaped to the side and dodged to the side. Boom! The fireball landed, and the ground within a 5-meter radius of where Wang Yu had been standing melted. The hot magma formed a thick pillar of fire that shot into the sky. Damn, how we fight this? On the branches, Wuji and the others were dumbfounded when they saw the herb fairy's magic. The gigantic fireball was already scary enough, but who would have thought that it would also deal double and triple damage? Epic-ranked bosses were indeed ridiculously strong. When everyone saw Wang Yu ravage the 100 Herbs Fairy, they thought that this boss was a weakling. Now it seemed that they had underestimated the system's creativity. Seeing the magma pool formed after the explosion of the fireball, Wang Yu, who was hiding at the side, secretly broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he knew how to teleport. Otherwise, he would have been blown up. Lowly worm, let's see where you can hide. As soon as Wang Yu calmed himself down, Bai Hua Fairy shouted angrily again. At the same time, Wang Yu felt his feet heat up, followed by a sea of flames shooting up to the sky, engulfing Wang Yu's figure. Ha ha! Now you've seen the power of nature. Seeing Wang Yu being engulfed in flames, 100 Herbs Fairy laughed exaggeratedly. Next, I will kill all of you invaders. Only then will I be able to vent my anger. Hearing 100 Herbs Fairy's almost insane laughter, everyone was speechless. What the hell? Is this woman's brain broken or something? Of course, a crazy boss's damage is definitely much higher than a normal boss's. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy raised both of her hands, and countless fireballs appeared around her body. Then, she raised her right hand to the sky, and her left hand slammed down. The fireballs around her body shot up into the sky, and then fell down as if they were raining down from the sky. In a split second, the fireballs in the sky covered the entire scene. Quickly hide behind the boss. At this time, the fireballs were already exploding downwards. From how 100 Herbs Fairy attacked Wang Yu just now, it can be seen that each fireball has an area of at least 5 square meters. With this wave of fireballs, there shouldn't be any place to hide. Of course, 100 Herbs Fairy's attacks weren't without blind spots. For example, right below her, there was no magic coverage. After giving the order, Wuji jumped down from the branch and flew close to the ground. After receiving the order, Exquisite Dream arrived first and was the first to reach the safe area. Yang Na followed closely behind and used her movement technique, dodging left and right, barely managing to reach 100 Herbs Fairy. Spring Soar wasn't so lucky. Spring Source Mist Transformation was already slow, and it had no magic resistance. After struggling for a bit, it was smashed to death by a fireball. Not far away, the few people at the peak of greatness were even more pitiful. The others at least had the chance to escape, but they were completely controlled. They had nowhere to run, even if they wanted to. They could only watch as the fireball fell from the sky. Oh no, the Greater Heights players can't die. At this time, Wuji suddenly thought of the greater heights and slapped his thigh as he shouted. Everyone had come to this dungeon to complete the Greater Heights quest. If the Greater Heights player died, the quest would automatically be judged as a failure. This was the first business that Xuanzhen's Ragtag Bunch team had accepted. To fail on their first mission, this was 2F** King inauspicious. Actually, to Xuanzhen's group, inauspiciousness didn't matter. The problem was that if the quest was completed, there would be a reward for the Greater Heights quest. If the quest was failed, then what kind of reward would there be? Just as the Greater Heights players were blinking their eyes and waiting for their deaths, a ray of light suddenly struck Greater Heights. In the next moment, the Greater Heights grass cocoon hung on a broken branch. At the same time, a message from Mingdu appeared in the channel. "Idiots, avenge me!" Old Li, seeing Mingdu's message, everyone was filled with emotion. No one could have imagined that Mingdu, who never suffered losses, would actually sacrifice himself for someone else. After the 100 Herbs Flower Fairies bombardment, 90% of the area was turned into a sea of fire. Only a few corners and the area below the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy were not affected. Huh, what a stubborn worm. It's not dead yet. At this time, the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy also saw the Greater Heights on the branch and Wuji's group below it. Wuji used a holy mark on the bottom of the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy's skirt, and then said with a smile, "To die under a peony flower, even as a ghost, it's still worth it." Haha, you're very interesting. I really can't bear for you to die like this. The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy smiled sinisterly, and 2 balls of fire appeared in her palms. One was aimed at Wuji's group, and the other was aimed at the Greater Heights. Wuji chuckled. "Actually, I can't bear for you to die either. If that's the case, how about we stop here?" Chapter 737. As 100 Grass Flower Fairy spoke, a flying claw suddenly flew up from behind her and wrapped around her neck. With a twist of the rope, 100 Grass Flower Fairy's laughter was interrupted. The 2 balls of fire in her hands also disappeared. At the same time, a voice that left 100 Grass Flower Fairy traumatized rang out. "Did I tell you that your laughter is very unpleasant? It's Old Cow." Hearing this voice, Wuji and the others immediately perked up. Turning around, they saw Wang Yu holding the rope with one hand, smiling as he greeted them. 100 Grass Flower Fairy said in horror, "Impossible. I clearly saw you being swallowed by the flames." Wang Yu laughed. "Don't you know that there's a skill called doppelganger?" In the instant the flames rose, Wang Yu used doppelganger, then activated Qin Gong and easily jumped out of the range of the magic attack. F***CK, since you dodged it, why did you only come out now? We thought you were dead. Exquisite Dream said unhappily. Just now, 100 Grass Flower Fairy had caused too much of a commotion, and no one had the time to look at the team chat. Moreover, with such a fierce attack, no one dared to believe that anyone could survive. Wang Yu pointed at the rope in his hand and laughed. Hee hee, I'm gonna go pick up my equipment. After 100 Grass Flower Fairy absorbed the Scarlet Wasp Demon Guard, Wang Yu's Flying Dragon rope fell to the ground. Just now, Wang Yu had casually picked it up. Damn, if that's the case, then you'll die with them. 100 Grass Flower Fairy roared angrily, gathering fire elements in her hand again. Hurry and dodge. Wuji gave Wang Yu an invincible buff, while giving orders to the others. Everyone had seen 100 Grass Flower Fairy's terrifying magic. Now that they saw fire elements gather in her hand, they instinctively wanted to dodge. But Wang Yu didn't move. Instead, he calmly grabbed the Flying Dragon rope with both hands, then suddenly pulled it down. 100 Grass Flower Fairy was like a little chick that had been grabbed by the neck. She stopped chanting, and the fire elements in her hand disappeared again. Despicable, come down. Seeing that the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy was about to spout nonsense again, Wang Yu jumped up and grabbed the middle of the Flying Dragon cable, then used the 1000 Gene Drop version of Thunderstamp. The Herb Fairy had lost the protection of the Earth Force and returned to her weak body as a magician. There was no way she could withstand Wang Yu's attack. Thunderstomp's high priority dragged the 100 Grass Flower Fairy down from the air. Plop! The 100 Herbs Flower Fairy fell from the sky. The back of her head hit the ground, and she was confused. Hee, if you can use a skill, I'll write my surname backwards. Wang Yu grabbed the rope around 100 Grass Flower Fairy's neck and stomped on her chest. Oomph. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy coldly harumphed, laying on the ground and gathering a fireball. Wang Yu once again tugged on the rope. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy twisted its neck, dispersing the fireball. The skill was interrupted once again. Old cow, you're so cheap. Seeing Wang use despicable methods, even a shameless Wuji had to admit defeat. A magician's casting was divided into 2 steps, casting and casting. Before casting, if the magician's actions were interrupted during these 2 steps, the skill would be interrupted. Skills that interrupted casting generally had low priority. As a boss, players' interrupting skills would not have much effect on the 100 Grass Flower Fairy. However, Wang Yu used a rope to wrap around the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's neck. This was practically breaking the rules. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy was extremely stubborn. After being mocked by Wang Yu, she began to continuously struggle to cast. However, every time she used a skill, it would be interrupted by Wang Yu, wasting her MP Quan Zhen, and the others didn't stay idle either, supporting Wang Yu from the side. Without the ability to cast spells, the magician boss was just a large sandbag. Under Wang Yu's control, the 100 Grass Flower Fairy was once again pressed onto the ground and beaten up. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy was in an extremely bad mood. As a legendary fairy, an epic boss, she was tied up and beaten up twice. This was 2F*King ridiculous. Furthermore, Wang Yu and the others' attacks were extremely humiliating. Not only was the 100 Grass Flower Fairy physically humiliated, but her mental state was also severely affected. For a moment, 100 Grass Flower Fairy's heart was in a mess. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. She couldn't help but tear up. Huh? Why are you crying? Wang Yu curiously asked as he pulled on the rope. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy broke down. No boss has ever failed like me. This isn't your fault. Wang Yu sighed. That's because they didn't meet me. The Quan Jin people and the 100 Grass Flower Fairy were speechless. Can we talk this out? The 100 Grass Flower Fairy admitted defeat. Wang Yu said, Sure, we only want your treasure chest. As long as you hand it over, we'll stop here. Only Reach the Peak knew the coordinates of the treasure chest. At this moment, Reach the Peak was bound and couldn't even speak. No one knew where the treasure chest was. Otherwise, they would have taken the treasure chest and ran away. They wouldn't be wasting time with the 100 Grass Flower Fairy. Treasure chest? That's impossible. Hearing Wang Yu's words, the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's eyes flashed with panic. Wuji laughed. It's fine if you don't give it to us. We'll kill you and find it ourselves. You're so despicable. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy glared at Wuji. You're too kind. Wuji laughed. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy said, If the treasure chest is taken, this scene will disappear. I'll be homeless. This is my last thought. Can you change the condition? Homeless? Become a wild boss? That's a good thing. Wuji said with a smile. Actually, Wuji wasn't wrong. For many bosses, dungeons were like cages. The life of a wild boss was something they yearned for. Of course, there were some bosses like the 100 Grass Flower Fairy who didn't like wild bosses. After all, it was a hidden dungeon. They didn't need to be killed every day. Do you dare tell me your name? If I get out, I'll pay you a visit. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy fiercely said to Wuji. Wuji pointed at Wang Yu and said, You told the party leader not to shoot. I told Big Bear to wait for me. We're swords pointing to the sky. Okay, I'll remember you. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy coldly snorted and stood up. Wang Yu thought that the 100 Grass Flower Fairy was going to lead everyone to the treasure chest, so he let go of the rope. Ha ha ha, you deserve to die. Unforgivable. Seeing Wang Yu let go of the rope, the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's attitude changed. She reached out and grabbed Wang Yu's flying dragon rope. Then, with a flash of light, the green wasp poison guard turned into a green light and enveloped the 100 Grass Flower Fairy. The 100 Grass Flower Fairy's health was full again. Her body glowed with a green light, and the grass on the ground began to grow rapidly. Not good. Everyone, get out of the way. Wang Yu yelled and jumped up. The 100 grass flower fairies' attitude changed too quickly. The others didn't even have time to react before they were entangled in the grass. Chapter 738. Players could not move as freely in the air as they did on the ground. In addition, Wang Yu had jumped in a hurry, so the green light from the Flora Fairy's eyes hit Wang Yu's body. When Wang Yu saw that her HP did not decrease after being hit by the green light, she was slightly surprised. Just as she was about to extend her arms and step in another direction to avoid the attack, who knew that when her arms and legs were extended halfway, it was as if they were tied by a rope and could no longer move. Wang Yu was caught off guard and lost his balance. He fell from the air and fell face first. At this time, Wang Yu suddenly discovered that his hands and feet were shackled with green shackles. Flower shackles. The flower whisperer uses her powerful soul to bind the player. This effect is linked to the caster's soul. There is no time limit. Damn you! After seeing the status of his body, Wang Yu couldn't help but curse. This boss was too sinister. Wang Yu fell to such a state. Wouldn't Xuanjin people laugh at him? However, when the people of Xuanjin saw the effect on Wang Yu, they did not laugh at him. Instead, they panicked. Everyone else was frozen, so there was a time limit to their skills. However, Wang Yu's shackles were linked to the caster's soul. Didn't this mean that the skill's effect could only be removed after the Flora Fairy died? This was too much of a scam. Although Flower Shackles wasn't an immobilizing skill, Wang Yu could still slowly move it. However, as a Grandmaster combat was a class that focused on agility, putting on a pair of shackles would directly turn a Grandmaster of combat into a stationary class. There was no point in fighting then. Just as everyone was panicking over how the plot had developed to this point, the Herb Fairy once again yelled arrogantly, "Despicable martial artist, keep dodging. I told you. You will pay for what you have done. I will make sure you will be bound forever." Hee hee. Wang Yu chuckled and said, "You sure talk big. Do you have the ability to?" The 100 grass flower fairy laughed. "Haha. Don't you know, the shackles on your body were cursed by my soul. As long as I am here, they will haunt you forever." F***CK, permanent curse? When Wuji and the others heard this, they looked at the effect of the shackles on Wang Yu's body again, and all of them showed expressions of despair. The 100 grass flower fairy obviously hated Wang Yu to the core. She even used such a vicious skill. The flower language shackles were connected to the 100 grass flower fairy's soul. As long as the 100 grass flower fairy was alive, no matter how many times Wang Yu died, the soul link would not be broken. In other words, if he didn't kill the 100 grass flower fairy today, Wang Yu would have to live with these shackles for the rest of his life. However, in Wang Yu's current state, he couldn't even move freely, let alone fight a boss. Fight a boss? Wasn't this a joke? Everyone secretly sighed for Wang Yu when they thought of Wang Yu's future. He would be exiled even when playing games in the future. What the F***CK was he trying to achieve? Oh, is that so? Hearing the 100 grass flower fairy's words, Wang Yu was slightly taken aback. A noble fairy would do such a thing? Humph. The 100 grass flower fairy coldly laughed. I've long since been abandoned by the tree of gods. I'm now a demon. Oh, is that so? Wang Yu's hands bent, and he scratched his head. Then he shouted to Wuji and the others, "Say, is there a way to break this curse?" Before Wuji could reply, the 100 grass flower fairy answered, "Of course, the way to break the curse is to kill me." After that, the 100 grass flower fairy imitated Wang Yu's tone and said, "But do you have the ability to do so? Just kill you?" Wang Yu smiled. That's quite a simple method. Simple? Is he crazy? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji and Exquisite Dream were immediately stunned. Even Yang Na revealed an expression of shock. Their opponent was an epic dark gold rank boss. Even a few dozen players with healthy arms and legs wouldn't necessarily be able to take it down. Now that Wang Yu was in such a state, he still dared to say such a thing. When did he learn to boast? However, at this moment, everyone saw Wang Yu calmly pull out a pair of fiery red boxing gloves from his bag. Huh, isn't that the flame gauntlets? Why did the old cow suddenly think of using a weapon at a time like this? Wuji said in surprise when he saw the boxing gloves in Wang Yu's hands. This set of boxing gloves was a gift from Wuji to Wang Yu. Originally, because boxing gloves would reduce his speed, Wang Yu had said that they were trash. Why'd he suddenly take them out and use them now? Wuji was very familiar with the attributes of the flame gauntlets. With Wang Yu's current state, if his speed was reduced, it would be like adding snow to snow. Oof. You sharp-tongued bastard, Dai. Seeing Wang Yu take out the flame gauntlets, 100 Herb Fairy frowned. With a wave of her left hand, a cloud of green poison gas exploded above Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu rolled on the ground and dodged the poison mist. He was a few meters away from the 100 Grass Flower Fairy. At the same time, Wang Yu equipped the flaming gauntlets. Still dodging, 100 Herb Fairy stomped her foot, and the weeds on the ground began to grow rapidly. Wang Yu activated Qinggong and leaped into the air. With a flash, he appeared in front of 100 Herb Fairy. You! Seeing Wang Yu suddenly appear so close to her, the 100 Grass Flower Fairy was shocked. She flipped her jade-like hands, and 2 jade green daggers appeared in her hands. Because 100 Herb Fairy had absorbed the green wasp poison guard, she now not only had the skills of a plant mage, but also the skills of an assassin in close combat. The daggers in 100 Herb Fairy's hands were 50% similar to the green wasp poison guard's twin stingers. Needless to say, they were also extremely poisonous. Even if a single stab didn't kill instantly, it would still be painful to be stabbed. After taking out the daggers, 100 Herb Fairy didn't say anything and stabbed at Wang Yu. The corner of Wang Yu's mouth slightly curled up. He took half a step forward with his right foot, followed by half a step with his left foot. His entire body flashed to the side of the 100 Grass Flower Fairy. Then, Wang Yu grabbed the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's wrist with his left hand and heavily punched the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's arm with his right hand. Bang! Wang Yu's fiery fist smashed into the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's elbow. -17444. The flames lit up, and a huge damage number floated up above 100 Herb Fairy's head. At the same time, Wang Yu was lucky enough to be hit by the burn effect. 100 Herb Fairy's face turned red, and her health dropped by the thousands. Huh, is old cow trying to kill the boss? Seeing this scene, Wuji said in surprise. The people of the Chuanjin sect all knew of Wang Yu's fighting style. He had always had a high level of technique, and he would never fight head-on against a strong opponent. However, that punch just now wasn't small and exquisite, nor was it big and powerful. Instead, it was straight and straight, without any fancy moves. It was exactly the same as a newbie fighting a monster. This clearly wasn't Wang Yu's style. Die, shameless bastard. At this time, 100 Herb Fairy's aggro was full after being hit by Wang Yu. With a loud roar, she twisted her arm and stabbed her dagger into Wang Yu's chest. Wang Yu once again took half a step to the side and half a step to catch up. His hands reached out without any fancy moves and grabbed 100 Herb Fairy's wrist with one hand and smashed her elbow with the other. Chapter 739. Half-step collapsing fist, as the name suggested, was a fist technique that could deal a huge amount of damage within a half-step. It was said that this fist technique was created by a Xing Yiquan expert in prison. At that time, that expert was the same as Wang Yu. His hands and feet were locked. However, for a martial artist, even if his hands and feet were locked, it would not be able to lock his strong heart. That was why that expert was able to create this fist technique in prison. Although Xingyi martial arts was an internal martial arts technique, it focused on exerting force. It was a rather powerful martial art, and the half-step collapsing fist was the martial art with the strongest explosive force in Xingyi martial arts. As the saying goes, a heavy sword has no edge. Half-step collapsing fist's great power made up for its lack of distance. The power that could topple mountains and overturn seas could often be defeated in one move. That was why it was said that there was no need for a second move to kill. Wang Yu changed into the flame arm armor, which lacked mobility. He wanted to pursue the overwhelming power of half-step collapsing fist. After all, within a half-step, mobility wasn't that important. Oh, standing is also called a fist technique? When Wuji heard Yang Na's words, he couldn't help but ridicule. Wasn't this a technique only used by elementary school students? Yang Na said, "You don't understand. Normal people can't take a punch from this fist technique." Ling Longdream was puzzled. Normal people can't take it, but the boss can't take it. That's why he didn't stand, but used a half-step distance to move. Yang Na explained while sighing. He really is a genius. As a Xing Yiquan family, Yang Na was very familiar with half-step collapsing fist. Half-step collapsing fist was the basic requirement of half-step collapsing fist. The reason why Yang Na only recognized it after Wang Yu used it twice was because Wang Yu's footwork wasn't the special footwork for half-step collapsing fist. Half-step collapsing fist walked the path of defeating the enemy in one move. Compared to Bejiquan, which was known for its ferocity, it wasn't much weaker. Furthermore, the steps were in units of half-step. Thus, this fist technique leaned towards meeting force with force and wasn't good at dodging. Wang Yu knew that he couldn't defeat his opponent in one move, so his footwork was very flexible. It looked like he was throwing a punch in the middle, but his feet landed quickly and accurately, dodging his opponent's attack. One had to know that Wang Yu's hands and feet were currently locked, and his maximum distance was only half a step. No matter what kind of footwork he used, he would not be able to exceed this distance. In Yang Na's knowledge, the only person who could rely on footwork to dodge the boss's attacks at this distance was probably the ancestor who had created this fist technique. Wang Yu was only 25 or 26 years old, yet he was able to reach such a realm. It could be seen that his talent in martial arts was so high that it was simply shocking. Oh, that's true. The boss didn't even touch the old cow. Wuji also noticed this after hearing Yang Na's words. He's quite amazing. When we have time, we should also learn from him, Exquisite Dream said. Hearing this, Yang Na's forehead was filled with black lines. Wuji and Exquisite Dream's strength wasn't bad, but in the end, they were still amateurs speaking layman's words. They thought that this plaything would be easy to learn. If it was really as they thought, then wouldn't geniuses just be picked up from the ground? In any case, Yang Na was considered a person with superior talent. She had been practicing martial arts since she was a child and could be considered a young expert. Even she couldn't see through Wang Yu's depth. As they spoke, Wang Yu had already exchanged several blows with the 100 Herbs Fairy. No matter what angle the 100 Herbs Fairy attacked from, Wang Yu repeatedly used the same move. Moreover, every time Wang Yu attacked, he was able to easily dodge the 100 Herbs Fairy's attack, latching on her wrist and landing a punch on her elbow. Gradually, the frequency at which the 100 Herbs Fairy's arm was being attacked by Wang Yu became slower and slower. Finally, after a dozen or so exchanges, there was a kacha sound. The 100 Herbs Fairy's jade arm was smashed into two by Wang Yu. The dagger in her hand was also thrown to the ground. Wang Yu grabbed the dagger with his cloud-catcher hand and picked it up. Blade of Poison, dagger, set equipment, left, attack, 200-240 mana, 120-160 plus 50 agility plus 50 strength set equipment stats, unactivated, item description. The 100 Herbs Fairy's Flower Whisperer's defensive weapon. Seeing the dagger's stats, Wang Yu smiled. It seemed that his guess was correct. Once the boss dropped its own weapon, the weapon would also have stats. Broken attack. He even broke the boss's broken attack. Seeing Wang Yu snatch the 100 Herbs Fairy's dagger, everyone was once again dumbfounded. Broken attack was an attack effect that players had recently discovered. As long as a player focused their attack on a single point, the boss would drop materials from that area. Of course, with the current strength of the players, broken attack was only limited to small monsters. A weapon like Wang Yu's that could break a boss's broken attack was inhuman. After all, it was already very difficult for everyone to kill the boss. Who would dare to focus their attacks on a single point? After breaking one of the 100 Grass Flower Fairy's hands, Wang Yu moved to the other side of the 100 Grass Flower Fairy and began to attack the other hand. The 100 Herbs Fairy couldn't even block Wang Yu with two hands, let alone one. After another 20 or so exchanges, Wang Yu successfully broke the boss's broken attack. The other dagger fell into Wang Yu's hands. Blade of Poison, dagger, set equipment, right attack, 120-160 mana, 200-240 plus 50 spirit plus 50 intelligence set equipment stats, unactivated. Item description: 100 Herbs Fairy's Flower Whisperer's defensive weapon. The 100 Herbs Fairy, who had lost both her hands, was basically crippled. With Wang Yu's ferocious punches, the 100 Herbs Fairy finally cried out, "XXX, I'm coming," and fell to the ground. With the 100 Herbs Fairy dead, Wuji and the others were released. However, apart from Wuji, everyone else didn't move. Clearly, they were all dumbfounded. This was especially true for Greater Mastery. Right now, his feelings were indescribable. Greater Mastery originally thought that Wang Yu's insistence on killing the boss was just a joke. Who knew that this scary guy wasn't joking? He really did it. It was a level 55 Dark Gold epic boss. Reaching greater heights made him wonder if he was dreaming. Is she really dead this time? Greater Mastery pointed at the 100 Herbs Fairy on the ground and asked in disbelief. The 100 Herbs Fairy had revived 3 times in a row. It had left quite a psychological scar in everyone's hearts. Even though everyone's control effects had been removed, they were still a little worried that this woman would make a last spurt of energy. Wuji walked up and stuck his hand into the 100 Herbs Fairy's collar. Her chest is still warm. Do you want it? Everyone, it's good that she's dead. Wang Yu let out a long sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Soloing a boss wasn't an easy task, especially against a boss like the 100 Herbs Fairy. Wang Yu's hands and feet were locked, and he couldn't be hit by the boss. The mental toll was unimaginable. Wang Yu wasn't physically tired, but he was mentally tired. Chapter 740. Oh, yes. Reaching the pinnacle had yet to recover from his shock. He anxiously ran over to the 100 Herb Fairy and started looting the corpse. Reaching the pinnacle, quickly pulled out an item. It was a pink robe. Although no one could see the attributes of the robe, the purple glow it emitted made everyone's heart clench. Everyone had their own strengths. When it came to fighting bosses, Wang Yu was definitely invincible. When it came to looting corpses, she was at the peak. If anyone dared to say that they were second, no one would dare to say that they were first. Robe of Nature, robe, epic, physical defense, 120-130 magic resistance, 300-300 plus 55 intelligence, plus 55 spirit, plus 20 all elemental damage increased. Force of Nature, passive skill. All magic damage increased by 30%. Cast speed increased by 30%. Force of Nature, passive skill. All magic resistance increased by 30%. Magic penetration ignored by 30%. Force of Nature's Blessing, passive skill. HP and MP recovered by 2% every second in battle. Force of Nature, passive skill. When HP is lower than 30%, the growth effect will be automatically triggered. Recover 50% of the player's maximum HP over 5 seconds. Cooldown, 360 seconds. Force of Nature, active skill. When the player is in the Force of Nature, the player can deal true damage equal to 100% of the player's magic damage to all targets within a 360 degrees 500 radius. Cost MP 1200. Cooldown, 360 seconds. Class requirement, Cloth Armor class level requirement. 55 item introduction. Force of Nature is a sacred item given to the elves by the Creator God. It is also the only treasure that the Flower Whisperer, the heir to the Elf Queen, did not return to the elves. Epic skill, Force of Nature, active skill. Costs 50%. MP summons the Flower Fairy Guards to assist in battle. The Flower Fairy Guards levels are the same as the player who equipped the robe. The only piece of equipment for a hidden dungeon. 3 pure ones. Has old Deng's hand been blessed? Soaring Spring exclaimed in shock when he saw the attributes of the Force of Nature. As a piece of cloth armor, the robe of Nature's physical defense was no weaker than leather armor of the same level. Its magic defense was also over 300 points. Moreover, this robe increased the magic damage and defense of all attributes. Mages who focused all their points on intelligence would have far more magic resistance than tanks. With nature's growth, nature's blessing, and 2 recovery passive skills, any magical class player could easily defeat a dozen or so mages. Even a shield warrior would not stand a chance against nature's light, which ignored defense. It was clear that this robe was a godly piece of Fatan equipment. Of course, epic equipment was precious not only because of its attributes, but also because of its epic skills. The epic skill of the nature robe was the summoning skill, which summoned the 3 guards. Although it was impossible for players to summon a gold boss like the one before, at most, they could only summon elite monsters. However, everyone had seen these 3 guard before. They had both attack and defense. Moreover, they could also level up with players. They were not much weaker than Chun Xiang's summoned demons. A complete piece of epic equipment was extremely powerful. The only flaw that could not be considered a flaw was that this robe was F*King pink, and it was a piece of cloth armor. Xuanjin and Wang, you had a total of 4 cloth armor classes, and all of them were male. Even if it was an epic equipment, it was still a bit of a taboo. Judging from the attributes of the robe, the 4 of them would have a huge improvement after wearing it. A Grandmaster of Combat had always been a close combat sub-tank class, and Wang Yu had an additional point in intelligence. If she were to wear this equipment, she would become an unprecedented super tank. Wuji's increased survivability meant that the entire team's survivability had increased as well. With 3 more targets to summon, Chun Xiang's strength would also increase by leaps and bounds. As for Mingdu, there was not much to say. As the only player in the game who could learn all types of magic, this robe was most suitable for Mingdu. Old cow, take it. You usually wear cloth armor anyway. Wuji was the first to speak up. In terms of instance dungeon contribution, Wang Yu is definitely the biggest. Not to mention that the equipment was given to Wang Yu. Even if Wang Yu took it away now, no one would have any complaints. No, it's trash. Wang Yu did not give face and gave a verdict on the robe. Everyone vomited blood at the same time. Epic equipment is trash. Sometimes, even a smart person like Wuji could not keep up with Wang Yu's thinking. This was too much. An epic equipment was actually trash in this guy's eyes. What kind of logic was this? I know it's an epic equipment, but the problem is that it's useless for me to wear it. Wang Yu shrugged. Greater Heights said, "Do you know that after you wear this equipment, you'll be a tank stronger than Shield Warrior? You'll definitely be able to withstand the attacks of more than 10 mages." Oh, Wang Yu nodded and said, "Then it'll be even more of a waste for me to wear it. The mages can't hit me anyway." Greater Height's mouth twitched when he heard that. He was suddenly speechless. Wasn't that right? Wasn't the herb fairy powerful? Even the spells that could instantly destroy the entire map could not do anything to Wang Yu, let alone the others. Taking a step back, Wang Yu's current clothes were growth type. The attributes it gave were more suitable for Wang Yu's style than the robe. Moreover, it was fine if the robe was not suitable for fighting. A man wearing a pink robe, wasn't it coquettish? Then give it to Old Li. Seeing that Wang Yu didn't want it, Chun Xiang suggested. Mingdu had always been the team's damage dealer, and he had died protecting Greater Heights. This equipment was more suitable for Mingdu. Logically speaking, Mingdu was the most suitable to wear it. The key was that Old Li even wore women's clothing, so he probably wouldn't mind wearing a pink robe. Hearing Chun Xiang's suggestion, Wuji replied without hesitation, all right." After putting away the nature robe, Greater Heights lowered his head and continued to loot the corpse. Soon, he found a ring that glowed with a green light. "Haha, old dang, your luck has finally run out for once." Seeing the green light on the ring, everyone laughed. The green light was the sign of a bronze equipment. Although accessory equipment was rare at this stage of the game, who would put a bronze equipment in their eyes? It seemed that reaching the peak of good luck was not absolute. Greater Heights didn't say anything and displayed the ring's attributes. Seeing the ring's attributes, everyone's eyes widened. This ring, damn! Wizard of Oz, ring, bronze, attack, 1-1 magic, 1-1. Chapter 741. It's actually a transformation tool. Everyone started sweating. Transformation tools were one of the rarest special items in Rebirth. It was also a mischievous experience by the game designers. Different transformation tools had different usages. Since the start of the game, there were only 2 known transformation tools. One was a necklace for transforming into an angel, and the other was a ring for transforming into a skeleton. The former pretended to be an NPC in Holy Light City and was killed to the point that he didn't dare to log in. The latter was more pitiful. He wanted to show off after obtaining the ring at a high price, but he was hacked to death by a bunch of Smurfs the moment he stepped out of the city gates. In terms of drop rate, its rarity was no less than that of an epic equipment. Reaching the pinnacle, he could even obtain such a thing. This guy must have spent all his talent points on luck. No wonder he was as noob as a dog. Brothers, let's make a deal. Give this ring to me. Everyone was shocked by reaching the pinnacle's luck. Before they could discuss how to split it, Chun Xiang came out with a cheeky smile on his face. Get it to you? Hearing Chun Xiang's words, Wu Ji was immediately unhappy. Why should I? I want it too. Let's roll for it. Hey, you shameless ****. Didn't you take the eyeball grass? This is a rare tool. The eyeball grass isn't as fun as this. Wu Ji and Chun Xiang began to argue with each other. Wang Yu was speechless. He really didn't know why these two were arguing over a lousy ring with mediocre attributes. After arguing for nearly a minute, Chun Xiang turned to Wang Yu and asked, Brother Nyo, you killed the boss. Who do you want to give it to? This. Wang Yu thought for a moment. In the previous stage, Wu Ji already took the eyeball grass. Logically speaking, it should be given to Brother Chun. See that? Brother Nyo is still the more reasonable one. Old dang, give it to me. Chun Xiang rolled his eyes at Wu Ji and ran to reaching the pinnacle to snatch the ring. Old cow, you're committing a sin again. Seeing Chun Xiang take away the ring, Linglong Dream gave Wang Yu the middle finger. Boss Iron Ox, are you really going to give the ring to that? Greater Heights glanced at Spring soaring and didn't dare to continue. Wang Yu was puzzled and asked, Is this ring very powerful? Not at all, Greater Heights said, but don't you feel that this ring is a little wretched, perverted? Wang Yu was stunned when he heard this. He immediately thought of how Mingdu looked when he was standing under the skirt of the 100 Herbs Flower Fairy. A layer of cold sweat formed on his back. F***CK, this was a shrinking ring. Normal people might only use shrinking as a control skill, but was Chun Xiang a normal person? Think about Chun Xiang's equipment. A necklace that could hide his personal information and a ring that could shrink. What normal person would collect these things? The effects of the equipment were already perverted. Now that it was obtained by a perverted person like Chun Xiang, how great would the chemical reaction be? Brother Chun, you're not thinking of using this thing to do bad things, are you? Wang Yu asked with regret. Chun Xiang said loudly, Bad things? What bad things? G. Chun Xiang's surname is G. Have lived an honest life. I've never known bad things. Like peeking under someone's skirt or something like that. Wang Yu said, What are you saying, Brother Nyo? I'm a scholar of the spring and autumn annals. Chun Xiang said righteously, You're insulting me by saying this. Wang Yu was speechless for a moment. Forget it, just don't use it to bully your own people, or else I'll stomp you to death. Giving away equipment was like spilled water. Wang Yu naturally knew what Chun Xiang was like, but the equipment had already been given away. It wouldn't make sense to ask for it back. Was he supposed to give it to Wu Ji? Now that he thought about it, Wu Ji's act of asking for the eyeball grass didn't seem that pure. How could these bastards be so perverted? Thinking about it, Wang Yu suddenly felt like he was as noble as a lotus flower that had grown out of the mud. Let's continue. Wang Yu sighed and said to Greater Heights. Reaching the peak of perfection replied and took out another strange item. Natural quiver, special item. Arrows placed in the quiver can randomly obtain an attribute. Required class. Archer arrows with attributes were called magic arrows. They were a very powerful type of arrow. The arrows sold in Rebirth Shop had no attributes. There were only 2 sources of magic arrows. One was from players who had learned enchantment and enchanted arrows. The other was from hidden dungeons. There were hundreds of arrows in a set, and enchanting them one by one was a huge project. Hidden instance dungeons were even rarer. So, regardless of the source, magic arrows were extremely expensive. Natural Quiver could turn ordinary arrows into magic arrows. This was no different from an automatic enchantment. The value of this quiver could be imagined. There were 2 archers in Xuanzhen. Naturally, they couldn't randomly distribute it. Wuji said to Yang Na, an exquisite dream. You 2 roll. Exquisite Dream waved her hand and said to Yang Na, I don't need it. You take it. Exquisite Dream was a shadow manipulator. Her arrows were all shadow arrows enchanted by her own magic. She really couldn't use ordinary magic arrows. Yang Na had also given Exquisite Dream a pet taming book. It was reasonable for her to give up the quiver. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Yang Na naturally understood this, so she happily equipped the quiver. The last time, Greater Heights looted something that looked like a dragon fruit. Immature flower fairy fruit, pet item, the fruit of the elven tree. When placed in the nursery, it will produce a high elf. So as a pet egg, Greater Heights could even loot epic equipment and transformation items. Looting a pet egg obviously didn't raise anyone's eyebrows. Pets were rare, but raising them was also a big hassle. Everyone usually didn't even go to the guild encampment. Who would have the time to raise something like this? Finally, Wuji suggested, keep it first. Didn't the guild's mythical beast die? Let's use this to replace it. Everyone unconditionally agreed. After looting the 100 Herb Fairy's corpse, Greater Heights pulled out a black disc. Then, after following the disc for a few steps, he pulled out a shovel and started digging. After digging a few times, reaching the peak of perfection, pulled out a radiant treasure chest from the ground. Not only did the treasure chest give off a shocking light effect, but it was also covered in runes. With just a glance, one could tell that it was not an ordinary item. Reaching the peak of perfection, took out an ancient black key and carefully opened the treasure chest before taking out a few items. A black plate, a green vine, and a letter. It was previously agreed that the items in the treasure chest belonged to Greater Heights, and the reward from the dungeon belonged to Xuanzhen. So, no one asked about the items in the chest. Chapter 742. Is this it? The Apostle's Keepsake and Love Letter. Great Heights didn't hide anything as he displayed the command medallion. Wang Yu shook his head and said, Not this, I'm talking about the green one. Wang Yu pointed at the green vine in Greater Heights' hand and asked, This? Greater Heights raised the green vine in his hand and said, Divine Wood's vine, I think it's a rare material. This is the Divine Wood's vine. Wuji, who was at the side, immediately exclaimed when he heard this. He had been searching for him hundreds and thousands of times, but when he suddenly turned around, he found himself at the place where the lights were waning. That monster had run amok in hundreds of main cities, but still couldn't find it. But now, it was actually in the hands of someone who had reached the pinnacle. This guy was simply the lucky star of the Quanjin sect. What? Do you know what this thing is for? Greater Heights asked curiously. Are you selling it? Wang Yu didn't answer Greater Heights' question, but asked urgently instead. Greater Heights was stunned for a moment and said, Not selling, I'll pay a high price. Wang Yu said anxiously again. This Divine Wood's vine was a key material for Wang Yu to repair his weapon. Now that it was right in front of him, who knew how long it would take to find it again after this village? After all, it was easy to find an epic boss, but it was hard to find someone with luck like Greater Heights. Greater Heights smiled and said, Do you think I'm short of money? Wang Yu was stunned when he heard this and didn't say anything else. Greater Heights had such luck. He could casually sell some tools and become rich. He probably didn't lack gold coins. Then what do you lack? Wang Yu asked. I lack an expert like you as a friend. Greater Heights smiled and handed the Divine Wood's vine to Wang Yu and said, I'm not selling this thing. It's a gift to you. How can I accept this? Wang Yu was a little dazed when he saw the item perfection handed to him. The Divine Wood's vine was an extremely rare material. Not even evildoers run wild could obtain it. Any player that needed it could sell it for a high price. Yet, perfection had suddenly gifted Wang Yu such a precious item. Even if it was for the sake of making friends, Wang Yu must have a favor to ask of him by giving him such a huge gift for no reason. Wang Yu was not like those bees from the Quanjin sect who would not hesitate to take advantage of others. How could he accept it so easily? What's there to be embarrassed about? Wuji reached out to take the divine wood's vine and stuffed it into Wang Yu's hands. Didn't this kid say it already? If we help him clear the dungeon, he will reward us handsomely. This is what you deserve. In the end, Wuji was the cleverest one. He immediately saw through the little trick of reaching the peak of perfection, trying to use this thing as a favor. Yes, this is what you deserve. Greater Heights said after a moment of awkwardness. I know that. Wang Yu said, but this is a little too valuable. If it was before, Wang Yu definitely did not know the value of the Divine Wood's vine. But now, Wang Yu knew that this thing was something that evildoers run wild could not even find in 300 main cities. Its rarity was comparable to a godly weapon. Its value was definitely far greater than helping to clear the dungeon. Wang Yu was not the kind of person who liked to take advantage of others. How about this? Wang Yu thought for a moment and said, I can help you do one more thing as a commission. How embarrassing. Greater Heights said with a smile. His expression did not look embarrassed at all. It seemed that this guy had this thought for a long time. Thinking about it, the Divine Wood's vine was only precious to those who were useful. To those who were useless, it was just a rare material. From Wang Yu's attitude, it could be seen that Wang Yu really needed this thing. Using a rare material to rope in a peerless expert was definitely a profitable business. Greater Heights was a smart person. Old cow, you idiot. Don't you know that he's scheming against you? Wuji saw that Wang Yu was taking the initiative to help Greater Heights, so he privately messaged him to stop him. Wang Yu replied indifferently, I know, but I don't want a favor. You idiot. Wuji sighed helplessly and asked Greater Heights, Tell me, what do you want us to help you with? As long as we can do it, we'll help you. Wuji was too clear about the sinister nature of people's hearts. If Greater Heights used this opportunity to make Wang Yu do something like giving up the game, with Wang Yu's character of keeping his promises, would he do it or not? At this time, he added the last sentence, as long as we can do it, as a way to round up Wang Yu's words. Greater Heights said, Not you guys, but Boss Iron Ox himself. Oh, Wuji said vigilantly. What's your purpose? Greater Heights also saw through Wuji's thoughts. He smiled and said, Boss Wuji, don't worry. I just want Boss Iron Ox to escort me back to my main city. I have no other intentions. Oh, I see. Wuji nodded in understanding. Being a bodyguard was indeed not a big deal for Wang Yu. Thinking of this, Wuji asked again, Do you have many friends in your main city? I don't have friends. Greater Heights shook his head. In the game, strength was everything. Reaching the pinnacle was a noob with so many good things on him. Those who took the initiative to approach him were most likely harboring evil intentions. From their brief contact, reaching the pinnacle was also a proud and arrogant person. Very few people caught his eye and made him take the initiative to approach them. Therefore, with his personality, he would definitely not have any friends. Do you have a lot of assets? No. Greater Heights shook his head again. He was a guy who wandered around the world. All the good things were stored in the bank. It was impossible for them to be in a fixed location. Wuji smiled and said, If that's the case, how about joining our Chuanjin? I think our Chuanjin needs people like you. It had to be said that Wuji was really ruthless. Reaching the peak of perfection was just to trick Wang Yu to be his bodyguard. Wuji actually started to scheme against people who had reached the peak of perfection. Of course, Wuji still had some sincerity in saying this. Although Greater Heights' skills were trash and his character wasn't well-liked, his luck was good. Chuanjin had a great god like Wang Yu. No matter how good his skills were, they didn't need someone with good luck. As for the problem of character, other than Wang Yu, who in Chuanjin didn't join Chuanjin because they weren't well-liked. This wasn't a problem at all. Seeing that he was invited by Wuji, Greater Heights wasn't surprised. Instead, he said solemnly, Greater Heights, rarely have people that I look up to. You guys from Xuanjin are definitely an exception. However, I really can't join you. Why? Everyone was stunned. Because we're in different camps. I'm from the dark camp. As he said this, Greater Heights revealed his camp. The Herb Garden dungeon had just taught everyone a lesson. Different camps can't be together. Wuji was stunned for a moment before saying, "You can change camps. It's not difficult." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.